All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Weekend 2. Critical Reasoning is our lesson for today. It is 9 o'clock here in Los Angeles. Let's go ahead and get started. As I said to you last weekend, it is my opinion that critical reasoning is easily, without a shadow of a doubt, the single most important verbal lesson of the entire course. And I do think it is probably the most important skill to really master, just to carry you over throughout this entire exam. Meaning this spills over to the quant side as well, even though you don't see critical reasoning based questions. You see critical reasoning based questions as a third of the test straight up. Then you also see it in reading comp. I would argue when reading comp gets tough, about half of the material you see is critical reasoning based. So we're talking about now half of verbal is critical reasoning. Then when you get into IR, you see tons of critical reasoning type material, especially because it's integrating quant and verbal. And then AWA is nothing more than a critical reasoning assignment, involving a lot of sentence correction perhaps, because you're writing those sentences. But my God, so much of this exam is critical reasoning. And then when you spill over into the world of quant, I am confident to say that the world of data sufficiency revolves around critical thinking and being essentially skeptical throughout the process. And I think as a result, if you can master this area, man, it pays off hugely. Now, they tell you what's critical reasoning strategy going to help you do? Get questions correct, get them done quickly. Too many people just want to focus on accuracy. Don't be one of those people, guys. You got to be working on both accuracy and efficiency. Now, what's the game plan for today? We'll start off with some real quick categorization / swim methodology. It will be a little bit lecture intensive to start, and then we'll jump right into the meat of the lesson with the strength and weaken questions. These are easily, without a shadow of a doubt, the most important questions in critical reasoning. Probably spend, honestly, at least half of today's class covering it. Then we'll go ahead and get into the inference questions, and we'll finish out the day with some method of reasoning. If there is a question type that you're going to fall asleep on here today, and I know some of you are out in Europe and the Middle East, that's okay. This can be it. I'm okay with that. You see this a hell of a lot more common on the LSAT, less so on the GMAT here, folks. And I think that's the real key here. So I think that's a great point, man. And notice what they say. By the end of this lesson, you will know... By the end of this lesson, you will honestly have an approach to critical reasoning. If you don't, meaning if you decide, like once this lesson's over, like when I see a critical reasoning question, I don't really know what to do, so let me just be me, then that's a huge problem. You did not learn anything in these 3 hours. Don't just say I checked the box because I was here. I think that's... Oh, man. All right, with that, let's go ahead and get into this. I didn't even know Paul Manafort was a lawyer. Is he a lawyer? Dude, that's, you know, as they say, well, I don't know if they say, but some lawyers will say, hey, 99% of lawyers out there give 1% of us a bad name. I think that's probably true. So notice at this case here, oh man, Ryan. Oh my God. Here's a conclusion to the Ryan saga. He got put into another instructor's course, and that other instructor almost booted him out on the first day itself. That is complete comedy. I just thought I would share that. All right, so then it's just not me is the point of that story. So notice what it says. What is critical reasoning? It really is to think critically about arguments and situations. Critically. You know, think about people that are critical in your life. They're the people that just sit there and poke at people, prod at people, just try to be argumentative for the sake of being argumentative, almost as if your worst nightmare of a lawyer, that's all that is. Now notice here they say avoid groupthink and think outside the box, classic cliches, but I think they are important as well, because really what is at their core is just accepting what's been given. Don't accept, question. That is really what the crux of critical reasoning is all about. And that's why, in my opinion, aside from being ripped straight from the LSAT, the law school admissions test, this really is an exercise in learning to think like a lawyer, guys. That's really what I want you to be thinking about. All right, with that then, I want to bring us to what I will say is the most important page in your book or slide in this deck. If you master this, you master critical reasoning. Now, some of you may be getting real excited right now because you're like, shit, all I got to do is memorize this, then I'm good? You did not hear the words that came out of my mouth. I said, if you master this, master doesn't mean memorize. Any idiot can memorize, but mastery takes it to a whole new level. So what I want to do is just walk through this chart here, and we'll spend honestly the next 3 hours going through all of this. So each of these rows represents a category in the SWIM model. I want to take a look at the first two. These, like I said, are the most important because they are the most common questions you will see. And again, your job as a reminder is always to scan that question stem first. We talked a little bit about this last week. You want to get a sense of what the question's asking before you actually read the stimulus in front of you or the paragraph. And so here, based off of the trigger language, you know it's either a strengthen-based question or a weaken-based question if it's positively sort of worded or negatively worded. Now, in terms of classic argument structure, just as a reminder, and we saw this last week with syllogisms, you have premise, premise, conclusion in the mix. So you're using facts or evidence to guarantee the truth of a conclusion. So if you're trying to strengthen or weaken an argument, by definition, you're focusing your attention on the conclusion. And then what you're doing is trying to provide new information in the form of a premise, a fact. That's what you're trying to do. But please make sure that you understand something. Your job is not to prove or disprove. That is so critical to crushing this section. I think a lot of people will be like, oh, I got to prove this. I can't find one of the answers that proves it. I eliminated all 5 just now in my quest to find something that proves it. Oh, well, might as well guess blindly now. No, dude, that's not what you do. It says very clearly, you need not prove, you need not disprove. All you're trying to do is make it more likely to be true or less likely to be true. That is your goal with regard to strengthen and weaken questions, respectively. Now, the rest of the tips are arguably interchangeable, and I want to focus your attention on perhaps the most important tip of them all, which is new, relevant information. If you make a mistake here today in a strengthen or weaken question, I am going to say that 99.99% of the time, it's going to be because you did not provide new, relevant information. I think a lot of people just read that and read right past it. Huge mistake. Understand what new means, understand what relevant means. That's where your case is going to be made in any single question. So new means tell me something I don't already know. Relevant means tell me something that matters. As an example here, by way of analogy, imagine, of course, I'm representing Ron in court for whatever latest dust-up he has at his college where he teaches. And next thing you know, the judge is like, all right, do you got anything else you want to say for your client? And I say, yes, Your Honor. And I go in and I give my spiel. The judge is like, all right, great. What else you got for me? At that point, I'll be like, all right, well, let me go back. And I read my notes, and I just go back and say the same damn thing again. At that point, the judge is not going to be happy. The judge is going to say, what the F's the matter with you? You just told me. Clearly, at this particular point, you just told me the same exact things you just told me 5 minutes ago. That's not helping your client's case. Tell me something new. Tell me something I don't already know. You're wasting my time right now. So at that point, I'm like, yeah, you're right. My bad. I go back, look through my notes, and I come back with some new stuff. And my new stuff is all about his daughter's favorite games that she likes to play with her dad. And at that point, the judge is going to be like, look, man, this is new for sure. I'll give you that much. But where the F did you go to law school? Because at this point, how is this relevant to the complaint of those 19 students? It doesn't make any sense at all. Both your asses get out. And to me, what you start to realize is that if you ain't providing new information, you ain't providing relevant information, you ain't going to persuade the judge. And as far as you guys get into the world of critical reasoning, high school law, exactly, what you start to realize is that, man, you will get eaten alive by the test maker, who all practical purposes is the judge in this case. So just keep that in mind. Now, how do you decide what is relevant? Look what they say. They say link those premises to the specific conclusion. Remember, there was always going to be support provided for the argument. If your new information that you're providing has nothing at all to do with the facts or support that was provided for the conclusion, you're wasting the goddamn court's time. Don't do it. But look at the other side of things. Look at what it says. It says reflect how to criticize, expose that gap in logic. To me, that's what I started to introduce you to last week when I said, hey, I love just trying to pause to predict. To me, that is the most important skill when it comes to strengthen and weaken questions. Don't just run into those answer choices. Only the idiots do that, guys. And if you want to keep doing that, just know where you're headed. So if I understand that there is a gap in the logic, the argument is not a structurally sound one, whether it's strengthen or weaken. And if I can actually think about what it is that is wrong with it before I get into those answer choices, then it really helps me when I get into the answer choices, weave through all that BS to find the right one. And that's something you want to keep in mind. So that's strength and weaken. Now, the next up is the inference. This rounds out the holy trinity of sorts. These have conclusionary trigger words. Of course, you're trying to draw a conclusion, thus your answer takes that form, and you focus your attention on the premises or the facts or evidence given to you. Now, look at the actual tips here. They are not very rocket science in nature. It says correct answer must be true, others not necessarily. Now you might look at that and say, man, that seems like a joke. And I would say to you, it kind of is. But that's because these questions are kind of a joke. These are the easiest questions of them all. Now, people will disagree with me all the time because they'll say, you're wrong. I get them wrong all the damn time. And I would say to you, yeah, but that doesn't mean they're not a joke. It doesn't mean that these aren't the easiest questions out there. It just means you ain't falling attention to the strategy you need to implement. So when we get into this mindset, understand what correct answer must be true means. It means it must be true 100% of the time for it to be 100% correct. When they say others not necessarily, that's where the trickery starts to emerge. Because any idiot knows that 0% true is 0% correct. But what about those answers like 99% true? Feel pretty good, sound pretty good, sometimes they taste pretty good, but I can guarantee you right now they're 100% wrong. And to me, exactly, Alexis, that's what you really need to be thinking about. And so with that, then Zoolander, best movie of all time. That's a very nice pickup, James. So if you notice at this last point here, this is the method of reasoning. Like I said, if you want to fall asleep on one question type here today, I'm cool with this being the one. Probably 90% of the material you see is up here, 10% down here. Remember, a third of the test is roughly pure critical reasoning based. As a result, you're looking at roughly 1 to 2 questions in the world of method of reasoning. Does that mean if I'm a 99er, I'm going to fall asleep here? Hell no. I'm looking to crush every single damn part of this test. This ain't an exception. But if that's not the reality of the situation anymore, some of us did some deep soul searching after last weekend, and we started trying to adjust our actual expectations instead of, which you should be doing at this early point in the course, adjusting your approach, then that's fine. Kick your feet up here. So here the actual trigger words are much more rhetorical in nature, so formal argument type language. Here what's interesting is you are typically tasked with describing logic. You don't need to get all up into the content. You're getting all up in the content in the first 3, not so much here. Now look at the tips on this one. It says, find accurate descriptions of logic or flaw, eliminate answers inconsistent. It's like, what? That seems pretty basic. And I'd say to you, yep, again, because these are pretty basic questions. There's not much to it. The only thing I would add here is, again, try to pause to predict. I don't try to predict up in this house. Here, 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 for sure. And we'll talk more about that as again, the class progresses. But this, in a nutshell, is critical reasoning. Like I said, you master this, the ins and outs, dude, you're golden. This is where you start to destroy a good part of this test. Now, some of you might be wondering, well, what's this SWIM model all about? Why even bother doing it? Great, valid questions. So I want to talk about a few reasons. First, I think the most obvious reason is it tells you what to do. Hey, it's a strengthening question. Oh, if it's a strengthened question, then I know that I need to focus my attention on the conclusion. I need to provide an answer in the form of a premise. I know I don't need to prove anything. I know that I need to provide new relevant information that makes the conclusion more likely to be true. And I know I need to link my premises to the specific conclusion to figure out the relevance. Excuse me. So, like, that's the no-brainer reasoning for it. That ain't the best one, though. The best one, without a doubt, is the constructive nature of it. And for me, as we go through this, you want to start to really appreciate this. I may have said it before, but if not, I'll say it right now. Lawyers, we are not creative people. We come up with a handful of really great winning arguments, and then we just recycle them. We just throw on different facts, same core argument structure, just different facts, and woo everybody as a result. And it's like, no, that's not what it's about. At its core, it's the same damn thing. So what I would say to you is, the test maker is no different. What you're going to find is that even the test maker is only creative to an extent. And this is going to actually spill over into other areas of the test. Forget critical reasoning, which is ripped straight from the LSAT, but even the world of quant. There's only so many different ways he can ask a triangle question. And if I can start to understand that, then what I start to realize is that the more I can start to connect dots across questions, the easier this becomes. And so even here today, we're going to see questions repeated over and over. It's not enough to get them right the next time through, and if you get them wrong, that's a fail. But it's about getting them right quickly the next time through. That's how you know you're doing things correctly. And you need to be aggressive on that. I got a great email from my other class the other day. And the guy said, you know, and we're about to wrap up the course this week coming up, and he's like, dude, and he's making such huge strides since when he first started. And he was like a reject from the first time through, totally didn't do things right with some other instructor. Finally came, he's like, fuck it, let's do it. I'm tired of making excuses. And he said, thank you for your contempt of mediocrity. And I actually really appreciate it. That's like one of the best compliments I've received in a long time, because there's no need to be mediocre on this test. I've stressed that before, and I really want to make sure you understand that. All right, well, with that then, I want to take a look at this third point, because I think this is an interesting one. It says swim is habit forming. Who cares? Like, this is where it does get questionable. A habit is only as good as the habit itself, so as a result, is this a good habit? Fortunately for you, it is. In my opinion, the worst thing that could happen to you on test day is you sit in front of your computer and you freeze. You see something pop up on the screen as deer in the headlights, and you don't really do a whole lot. And so turn you into one? I don't know, Melanie. I mean, so the jury's out. I got to ask the staff on that one. But here's the one thing that I'm going to ask. Hey, she baited me. So the one thing that I'm going to say is, to prevent that sort of deer in the headlights moment, here's the best part. You don't react that way. As soon as you see the question, the stimulus with a question stem and the 5 answer choices, you already know how to react. You're like, oh, sweet. I got to scan. This is, first of all, a critical reasoning question. Let me scan the trigger language of the question stem. Let me go back into that chart. Let me then try to implement the strategies I know in the stimulus. Now let me get to those answer choices and execute. Like, that's the best part about this in some sense. It just becomes muscle memory. You don't need to reinvent the wheel every single time. That said, I do want to comment on this last point, because this is arguably the most important thing to think about, not only here, but just moving forward as well. It says, if you don't swim, you may sink. Now note that word may. The word may is one of those types of wishy-washy words of sorts. Exactly, you could float. Like, and this is what, and not that floating is good either, but I think that's a valid point. But like, I do want to make sure you realize these guys are not so presumptuous as to suggest you will sink. And to me, that's the key that I want you to be thinking about. anytime we talk about new strategy in here, and we're going to be talking about strategy in here quite a bit, then the one thing that I do want you, and I love it, Emil, 100%, here's the one thing that I want you to keep in mind on this. Unless you can do two things, get questions right at the highest of levels, with not a lot of time being burned off the clock, it's time for you to learn some new strategy. But if you can get stuff at the highest of levels correct, with not a lot of time being burned off the clock, then you be you, man. You don't need to learn anything up in here. There's nothing I can teach. You're already rocking this. And I think that's something that's acceptable to at least think about. I think the problem is, for example, with critical reasoning, some of us can get questions done with whatever ways we got, but we can't get the hard questions right. Or when we do, it takes us a lot of time. Newsflash, your strategy sucks. Or let me take that back. It ain't optimal. And as a result, it's time to open your mind and take on some new strategy. And again, I'm talking CR today. I'll be talking RC next week. I'll be talking about SC the week after. I'll be talking algebra tomorrow. I'll be talking about strategy all the day of time. And so this is going to be applicable throughout. And remember, and I may have said this last week and I'll say it again now, like from time to time I'll tutor students who can finish the entire verbal section in about 30 minutes, 35 minutes. Whole thing done. And they ain't whole thing done in the 30th percentile. They're the whole thing done in like the 90th percentile. Like these people just close their eyes, they put their finger on the screen, one finger on the mouse, and they just start clicking away. And it does its thing. And you don't even question. They ain't swimming. They don't got no time for this bullshit. They feel it. They just know it. They understand it. No one needs to fix what ain't broken. Most of us aren't there though. We spend the full 65 minutes. Maybe we don't even get to all the questions. Maybe we do, but we don't even get into the 70th percentile. That's where new strategy comes into picture here, folks. So keep that in mind moving forward. Also, because today's lesson is the first verbal lesson of the course, I want to make sure we understand how we're going to measure our performance in here. A lot of people understand how to measure quant performance in a sense. Hey, did I get it right or not? That's all that matters. And I'd say to you, well, yeah, kind of, but not necessarily. In the world of verbal, there's actually arguably a much different level of measurement here to figure out, hey, how is it that I performed? So let me say this. Imagine you have two hypothetical students here. Let's call them student 1 and student 2 in this case. Imagine that the correct answer to this question, let's just say is E. This is the correct one. And let's say, in this case, they both pick C. That's what they both pick. Correct answer is E. Clearly, on paper, they're both idiots. They both got this stuff wrong. Doesn't make a difference. But I want to add a little bit more color to this story. Let's say when student 1 was going to town on this, student 1 decided that, I don't know, that B is out, that D is out, and he was down to A, C, and E. Student 2 goes to town on this thing and decides in this case that maybe D is out, that E is out, and he's down to A, B, and C. So they're both guessing 1 and 3, both getting it the same exact answer, both getting it incorrect. Again, as far as you're concerned, potentially, certainly as far as GMAC is concerned, they're both idiots. They're both in the same exact shoes. As far as I'm concerned, they could not be worlds apart, more worlds apart. And the reason for this is because, in my opinion, student 1 has all the hope in the world to actually be able to score at a high level come test day. Student 2, I'm afraid, does not. Why? Because student 1 is not so arrogant as to know what the right answers are and what the wrong answers are when he clearly doesn't know. Student 2, on the other hand, is. You can't really teach people that are that arrogant. I mean, I'll try every single week to talk about respect, but at some point I do know that those that can't be helped will not be. So what's the moral of this story here today? It's very clear, in my opinion. If you're going to get questions wrong today, which some of you will, and that's okay, be student 1. You have a fighting shot until the very end when you made a bad choice. That's something you can learn from and correct. If you're student number 2 today, when you get stuff wrong, ask yourself, why are you here? How are you so confident exactly? What have you done in your life to let you think that you're such a GMAT god, let alone critical reasoning champ? You ain't. Start to recognize that and start to adjust how you approach it. Because again, if you don't want to adjust the approach, you have to start to adjust those expectations. Kiss that 7-something goodbye. It ain't going to happen. And so that's all I want you to be thinking about. And this is going to be true throughout the rest of verbal. Of course, I want you to get answers correct in here, but if you get them wrong, be student 1. I can live with that all day long. All right, that's all I want to say here as far as critical reasoning wind-up intro is concerned. Let's go ahead and jump right into the meat of the lesson, which is all about the strengthen and weaken type questions. Like I said, these make up half the questions you'll see on test day. You know, from week 1, we talked about the 4 different ways to figure out a conclusion. First 3 tests are all trigger language dependent. The 4th test is sort of that more holistic test. It's a pain in the ass. It takes time, but it is the most powerful because it always works. With that then, I do want to start with this first question. I think this is a great question. It's such a great question. Part of what makes it a great question is it's a commonly occurring question. You see this question all the time. Hell, we're going to see it in an hour from now. Now you might be saying, what the F? I want my money back. These idiots can't even come up with enough new questions that they're going to repeat this shit in an hour from now. It's like, wait, slow down. You may still want your money back because you suck at the GMAT, but it's not the same exact question you'll see in an hour from now. It goes back to what I said earlier. At its core skeletal structure, it will be the same. We're just going to throw some new facts on top of it and all of a sudden spin it around you, and you're just going to be thinking, ooh, this is cool, this is new, when it ain't. And to me, that's what's beautiful about this question, because I'll tell you, this is the same type of sort of question where you can thumb through the official guides and you can see tons of questions that start to fall into this same mold. But I also love this question because it's ready to start punishing some of you in a big way. It's like, hey, I know that it's 9:30 here in LA or wherever else you are, whatever it is. I know you want to kind of ease into this test or ease into this class. That shit don't happen on test day. When the test starts, you got to come out of the gate swinging. And on a question like this, it's ready to start punishing some of you who are going into autopilot mode. So here's what I'm going to say to you. Obviously, you want to get the right answer in the poll whenever the poll opens. That's a no-brainer, always. But if that's all you're caring about, you're a C student in my life with regard to critical reasoning. And think about that. When is getting the right answer a C student in my world? Those of you that want to start climbing your way towards becoming a B student, which is pretty damn good, you want to start to see what the trap answers are on this question. And on this question, what I will tell you is the trap answer is one that exploits a common mistake in critical reasoning. They call it mental inertia. That is, they write about stuff that perhaps arouses opinions and interest, feelings on matters, because maybe it's deeply personal to you or it's current enough in the real world that people are likely to take in a direction it was not intended to be taken. But nonetheless, they give you those answer choices ready to weed your ass out. Remember, it's all about those damn off-ramps to your final destination. And they're just trying to get people off that damn freeway. Not everyone can get off at HBS exit. So if you don't know what the number one wrong answer is going to be on this question, the most tempting, then you're probably picking it, or worse. But that itself is not even where I want this to go. Remember, what I really want to do is to think like the test maker. I want to be able to understand basically the entire setup of these questions. I want to be able to connect the dot from this question to an hour from now. I want to be able to connect the dot from this one to the official guide if I choose to practice after class. Like, I want to just be able to connect dots, damn it. And in order to do that, I want to start learning to think like a lawyer. Again, good or bad, you're being taught right now by a lawyer in a subject, which I think is good, is ripped straight from the LSAT. And so for me, when I start to appreciate what thinking like a lawyer is all about, it's basically about taking a bunch of drivel and distilling it down to just a handful of words so I can really understand what's taking place. So here's my challenge. This is where the A students, in my opinion, start to emerge. I would say to you, try to think about this argument and be able to summarize it in 2 words. Maybe 3, fine, 4 if you need. Not a lick more than that. When you summarize this argument, let me give you some guidelines. None of the 2 or 3 or 4 words that you use should be on this slide. Let's make sure we understand that. I'm saying this as slowly and as articulately as possible, because even despite me giving such what I think is crystal clear instructions, you'd be surprised how many courses people will start to say, okay, I know how I would summarize this. Strengthen argument. And at that point, you just want to put your head down and be like, is this the same fool that on day 1 said he wanted a 760? Like, really? He can't even fucking listen to basic instructions on like the first verbal lesson of the course, 3rd day of class. Hell no. Hell no, because it's not even going to help you when you see another strengthen argument question. Because remember, part of the reason for this is you want to be able to learn how you can then crush a question that comes later. So you're trying to connect dots. Just doing that, completely useless. So not only should it not be somewhere that's on this screen, like you summarize this as sleep deprivation, you're dead on arrival. You're never seeing sleep deprivation again. So it's got to be something more broad than this, but more specific than that. Makes sense, hopefully. So none of the words should be on this slide. And if none of the words should be on this slide, then it is safe to say none of the words should be on this slide. Like if you were to say to me, oh yeah, like gap in logic. No shit, it's a strength and weaken question. Every single strength and weaken question has a gap in logic by definition. Strengthen, you're just bridging that gap. Weaken, you're just trying to showcase that gap by throwing a spotlight on it. Like, that ain't gonna help you. Your job is not to get the question at hand correct. Your job is to get every single one after this correct with not a lot of time being burned off the clock. That's how you can also start to tell the road that you're on. Are you a 99er? Because you don't focus on the shit in front of you. Are you a 49er? You do. Again, the reason I kind of put these in such stark contrast is for people to start to understand we can say what we want to get, but what we do might tell us we're not. And I want to make sure we start to change that stuff early. Not that it's, I suppose, important to remind you, but what the hell, I will. These courses move pretty fast, folks. I know we started last week. Next weekend we'll be halfway through the course. Just put that into perspective there for a second as you try to process all this. Like, you can just kind of feel like, oh, I'll just mosey on my way through. This isn't the place to do it, not if you're trying to do well. All right, with that then, here's what I want to do. I want you to bring some respect. I want you to be thinking about the sucker moves. I want you to be thinking about if you're an A candidate, and most of you said on day 1 you were, at least with the 7-something scores, I want you to think about how you would summarize this. It's imperative. That's what I care about most. If all you want to do is spend 2 minutes trying to come to this right answer, you are an idiot because you're focusing on things that aren't scalable. Even though today is the first day we're talking critical reasoning, if you start to buy in early to what I'm trying to teach you, which again is not in the books, if you buy in early, when we get into advanced critical reasoning in week 5, where it's supposed to be tough, you're going to say, this is the same old tired ass shit we've seen before. And I would say, yeah, it's because you learned approaches that are scalable. With that, let's put 2 on the clock. Let's get this started. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get into this question here. But before I do, I want to comment on what I will say is an early quote of the day contender. I love this. Although I take issue with the I lit a fire under my ass, I'm pretty sure that I lit that fire and or Ron lit that fire. So let's start with that one. But I love this comment from this student because think about what it really is saying. And let me rewind back. Wait, I thought those 19 students are all lying, Ron. So let me say this. This girl, it was a struggle city last week in the world of quant. It was straight struggle city. I'm talking about some embarrassing moves at times, and I know she has some high aspirations in here. So at some point I poked and prodded and let her know as much, and I think Ron was talking to her about similar stuff. And I'm glad that instead of moping this week, she actually did something about it and strengthened up her skill set. And to me, that's all this journey is about. Like if you take it seriously and you put in the time to do it right, like at some point you got to do a little bit of all that, then good things come. So this is just awesome. Again, basically it was she came looking in the mirror. Am I going to adjust my approach? Am I going to adjust my expectations? She's like, I ain't adjusting my expectations. I want what I want, damn it, and I ain't ashamed of that. I'm adjusting my approach, and she did, and that's awesome. All right, and some of you should be doing the same damn thing, frankly, especially given how much of that drop the course action we had in arithmetic last week, which was just frankly frightening. All right, let's get into this question now. Pretty good performance on the poll here. Not terribly disrespectful, but definitely got a lot of potential takeaways to learn on this question. And by the way, hopefully last week you guys finally, when you looked at your arithmetic lesson takeaways, you found you had about 20 of them. If you didn't, my hope is you went back and watched the lesson again, because tomorrow's algebra lesson is going to be brutal, and not having a sort of firm understanding of arithmetic will be the death of you. All right, with that then, let me ask you this question to start. Remember I was talking about mental inertia. I said sometimes people just go into autopilot mode. Any idea what the most tempting wrong answer is on this question? Because it just felt right, it kind of spoke to you, especially when they're talking about all this sleep deprivation and all this work stuff. Any idea what people went and picked? Yeah, awesome, awesome, awesome. Choice A for the win. Almost always, guys, almost always. And that's really nice that you guys are starting to see it. It says we're dialed in, which is great. And like I said, on the first day of class, you guys had some critical reasoning skills, so I was pretty impressed, which is good. Just side note, if we find that we're really good at verbal, then that means that we have less time that we need to dedicate outside of the actual class, and then we can focus our attention in the world of quant instead. So let me ask you guys this question here. Let's say I was on the fence with choice A. What other one answer is really compelling as well and pretty much says the same damn thing? Any thoughts there? Yeah, no shit, Philip. It says overwork there, man. But yes, exactly right. Choice E is indeed that classic sort of, and that's okay. Wait, we're going to get there in a second. Choice E is that classic sort of same sort of nonsense. So let me ask you this question. Well, let's pause this question for a second. Let me say this for a second. So let me say this. You guys have to understand one thing. There is no way you can have two right answers on any of these critical reasoning questions. You do have to admit that. And if you can't admit that, then you have to ask a question of yourself. In what world is A going to be a good answer, but not E? Or in what world is E going to be a good answer, but not A? I can tell you right now, exactly, only around the world. There is no way, no how that this can operate. And for me, right off the bat, that teaches me a huge takeaway, which is if answers start to smell the same, they stink, folks. There is no way. And I may have said this last week, and if not, let me say this now. When you start to get into your groove in the world of quant or verbal, you start to develop a sense of confidence that allows you to talk major shit to everybody else. Like right now, if I'm in choice A as an example, I'm looking at every single person who's picking choice A and I'm like, dude, I feel sorry for you. I feel sorry for your family. Like, you want to go to business school and this is the shit you're going to be picking? Like, that kind of mentality. And if you're an E, you're saying the same thing to the guys in A. And I could tell you right now, nobody in A should be saying that to E. Nobody in E should be saying that to A because they're saying the same damn thing. So even if I don't know how to do this question, I'm willing to say, fuck it. A and E are out. It must be one of these others. And good news is no one even picked choice D on this one because D is actually a little bit similar, but it don't matter. Only answers people are considering are down to B and C on this one. So let me ask you this. Dude, it's all about DMX here. Where is DMX these days anyway? So let me ask you this. I do believe that choice A and choice E is the right answer, or are the right answers, just to a different question. So if I want to think like the test maker on this, how would I change that one verb there? What would I listen, Arizona? Oh, man. Well, how would you do that? That's good to know, man. I think we need some DMX clips at the first break, Ron. Flashbacks. What would you change that one verb there? Let's go to Fire Festival, Natasha. Yeah, great, Aziz. Solid, Georgiana. Excellent, Angelica and Emma and Joe and Ruben and Eric. James Possible. Right on, Vikram. Notice what you guys are all starting to say right now. You're like, man, it's all about reducing. It's about reducing. It's about shortening. It's about decreasing. That's what choice A and choice C would be correctly addressing, but not restructuring. So the problem that you start to find here is that some of you say that you're able to identify the conclusion. After all, you got conclusionary language, you got normative language there. Of course, call for action. Of course, 2 out of the 4 tests are satisfied. Y test, 3 out of the 4 tests. Like, boom, I know this is the conclusion. I read it. Yeah, but did you stick with it or did you hijack it? Did you turn this into something else altogether? Because some of you may be right now thinking to yourself, man, you don't sleep enough and you know you work too damn much. And shit, you had the same conversation with maybe your doctor the other day, and he's like, dude, you gotta stop working as much as you do. So boom, choice A, choice E, final answer. And it's like, but that's not what this was about at all. You just hijacked the conclusion. And that's a very common mistake that people make. And that's what you wanna start thinking about. And so if you looked at this question and you did, and what was interesting is some of you said choice A was a sucker move, and I noticed, because I'm getting intel from Ron, is that you guys were in E, which is not bad. At least you saw A was tempting. You just didn't go one step further, bringing enough respect to connect the dots here. And you start to realize, like, yeah, I guess they both are the same, damn straight. So it's not enough to be like, oh yeah, A is wrong because it doesn't strengthen the argument. That's a shitty way to analyze it. And again, I say shitty because it's mediocre. Yeah, you got the question right, big effing deal. If you want to be a 99er or anything remotely close, and again, 90-some% of you want a 90+ percentile, so you better start getting on board, you say to yourself, hey, choice A is wrong because it answers the wrong question. It's basically answering the question if they wanted to reduce the workday, not restructure it. Let's move on. And it's that kind of mentality that allows you to slice and dice through these answers correctly and quickly. But let's put this on pause for a second. Like I said, hey, getting the right answer, C student. Figuring out the traps, B student. Like, what I care about most is learn to think like a lawyer in here. Learning to start. You don't need no 3-year law school education. All you need is to watch some of these damn shows on TV, and that's good enough to summarize what you got here. So question. Again, Ron reminded you, no words should be from this slide, previous slide. How would you actually try to summarize this argument here? There's no such thing as a bad answer as long as you stick to those basic rules. How do you say that? You could use the cause and effect isn't bad. I like it. Call for action. I don't have a terrible problem with that. Oh, Justin, don't say missing link, man. Dude, that's almost like missing, like gap in logic. Because they're all going to have a missing link. So even though you're technically correct, it ain't going to help you. It's always going to be a problem. Jerry, not bad. Correlation, causation. I'll take some of that as well. Angelica's coming through a problem solution. That's good. Yeah, by the way, we have, I don't even know, maybe there's 60-some people in here. I can't even really read here, but bottom line is, if I only have 5 or 6 people even trying on this one, then I will tell you this, I'm ready to not fucking go the distance and not even worry about this shit. I could just spoon feed you whatever's in the lesson. So if we want to push this 68, all right, I cannot have 5 people trying. 63 of you can get the fuck out today. I don't care. Like, if you're going to be here, I said on day 1, you're here to participate. If not, watch this on video. I don't need you taking from this class and not adding. 8 people chiming in. And again, and maybe some of you are like, no, dude, but I didn't even try to do it. Then why are you here? Go take one of the other classes. Shit, I'm sure even at Veritas there's some other instructors that will happily get you to a 500. So here's what I will say. A lot of you are correct in thinking about the correlation causation, but I do want to admit that in my opinion, the best summary of this is indeed a problem and a solution. That is my opinion, the way it should be done. And if you think about this, this should be, in retrospect, pretty damn clear. There's a problem. The guy tries to fix the problem. And I'm okay with that too, Alexis, right? But to the extent I could try to get it so short so that analysis becomes easier. Nah, that's okay. We like then it makes your job that much easier. Because notice what you're dealing with. If it's a strengthened question, you just show that that solution somehow addresses the problem. If it's a weakened question, you sever that connection. That's it, man. It's like if I say, you know, my older daughter, she has a tough time eating breakfast every morning. Like, that girl just does not like to eat. So what's my solution? I'm going to go out with some of my law school friends today for some cocktails in the evening. And then at that point, my wife's going to be like, what the F? Opioids. No. My wife's going to be like, what? Your solution, how the hell is that going to really help our daughter really eat breakfast tomorrow at a puppy party? Yeah, Ron's NDA is very sort of questionable at best. So the point is, it's a terrible solution to fix the problem because there's no link there. Unless what I could say is, no, dude, when I come home reeking of booze and then in the morning when she wakes up, she's going to get that whiff that just sort of essentially encourages her appetite. And as a result, you start to recognize, yeah, this thing gets done. Absolutely, Sean. That was part of the reason why I said you don't even want to be up in the paragraph at all. Exactly, Joe. So it's not necessarily a completely losing argument. But again, kidding aside on this, you're starting to see, at least with the contributions that we got, you start to realize, like, yeah, this does make a lot of sense. That is the way that we can start to summarize and have it be really effective moving forward. So now, knowing that we have to strengthen this argument, we know that we've got to show the solution is somehow going to address the problem. The problem is all the sleep deprivation, the solution's restructuring. What if restructuring don't do jack to it? That's why I think some of you were thinking correlation, causation. It's okay, I don't have a problem with it. So I look at choice B. Employees would get more sleep if they had greater latitude in scheduling their work hours. I love you, choice B, because you're exactly what I predicted. Remember what I already said. You pause to predict over here, man. You don't even start reading these answer choices. Only amateurs do that. If you don't already know what you want, you got issues. but I respect you. I'm not going to move this along. I'm going to take my time, and I'm going to make sure I'm not screwing this up. So I come to choice C. Individuals vary widely in the amount of sleep they require. Objection, Your Honor, relevance. If I'm teaching GMAT, I'm like, what the F does this got to do with anything? They never care, even the slightest up top, as to what the requirements are and whether they are uniform or not. Totally a waste of damn time. Choice B becoming the best answer. And again, most of you went in that direction, but it was kind of a piss poor way that we got there. Because hopefully, as you start to see now in retrospect, this is a 30-second question. 2 minutes on this is a joke. Because by the time you get to this and you start to summarize it, as Angelica and Georgiana and Alexis and a lot of others started thinking about just, hey, this is just a problem, this is just a solution, you're down to choice B within seconds. Not because you're a sleepologist and that's what you're predicting, but because you're a lawyer or you're starting to think like one. And it allows you to bank this time for something that matters, because this question ain't it. All right, with that then, I want to take a look at this next question here. Now, on this question, again, right answer in the poll, give yourself a whopping C. You figure out what the most tempting wrong answers are going to be, either because of mental inertia or classic right answer to the wrong question. That's great. You're on the way to a solid B. If instead, and I'm going to try this one last time and then I'm over this shit. If instead you're going to try to think like a lawyer, try to push this so that it's scalable, come up with 2 words. If you want 3 or 4, that's fine. Again, let me be explicit on this. Not one single word should be on this slide. If you start being like, it's about juice, you're an idiot. You're never going to see juice again. It's not helpful. It helps you on this question, maybe. It never helps you again. And I don't care about this question. I'm a 99er. I expect to see questions that are way harder and way more different. If all I care about is, and that's where people suck it up when they're starting to even think about takeaways, where they review their mistakes. They just memorize solutions. So shitty. You got to be thinking about how do I avoid those mistakes in the future. Otherwise, you ain't learning from them. And even when you get questions right, you got to be thinking about what did I learn how to execute on this so I can execute it quicker. Every 99er is constantly looking to tighten things up always. So it can't be on this slide. So if any of you start to be like, okay, question, argument, God, put my head down, log off, come back when you've had some more coffee. It's got to be general enough that it goes beyond juice, but more specific than this. You want to be able to identify, because I promise you, we're going to see the same exact question in week 5 advanced verbal. Week 5. It should be a 30-second question that day when many people want to spend 2.5 minutes on it. It should be 30 seconds, not for any other reason than you saw it before. You saw it before here in the context of NATE. So with that, let's put 2 on the clock. Bring respect, guys. Let's talk when time's up. All right, guys, let's go ahead then and get into this question here. But real quickly, I want to talk about this second quote of the day. I love this comment. I love this comment because it's honest. It's from someone who kind of ate shit on that first question. And then recognize, like, hey, remember on day one, the false negatives, telling the test maker that you're dumber than you really are? Not a good move to make. Get questioned wrong because you don't know how to do it. I can teach you. Ron can teach you. Any idiot can teach you. But if you get stuff wrong that you do know how to do, like the student did, but then you get it wrong, what's going to happen? GMAT's just going to punish you, and you'll be retaking and restudying and just maybe picking a different course path in life. And maybe that's what's supposed to be done. I don't know. But if anybody can beat this test, that would seem a shame to give up on your dreams. All right, with that then, let's go ahead and get into this question here. I do have all 5 answers on the board. That is a little bit of a shame. Maybe on this question, maybe it's not so bad. There are some trappy type answers. But on other answers, when the polls get broadcast, like look at the last one, right? I said, hey, what's the number 1 answer? We all said A. And then it turned out E was the number 1 answer, as we saw that was wrong. But the reality is they often waffle. So maybe on the last class, A was the most popular, E was second. So since they both said the same thing, I like to just add A and E together. And for sure, de facto number 1 wrong answer. And even on this question here, the trap answer in some sense is the number 1 wrong answer, but there does seem to be a little bit more incorrect action occurring on crappy answers. So obviously our goal is right answer. Next up goal would be fall into a trap answer, if you can even say that's a goal, but it's better than a crap answer. And there are crap answers on the board. Now, as a reminder, GMAT doesn't distinguish between a crap answer and a trap answer. You got it wrong, you got it wrong. But in my mind, I do. Because in my mind, it's all about what progress I'm making. And sometimes it's incremental progress that finally gets me to where I need to be. And it starts with just going from crap to trap and from trap to right. So let's start with a layup here, folks. All-Star Weekend. Is this strengthen or is this weaken? Let's start there. Let's make sure we can all agree on that, even though the poll suggests we do not, which just makes me sad. Yeah, absolutely. So notice here, it is for sure a weaken question. Why? Because this is very negative in nature, calls into question. Now, you might say, but most is a very positive word. Sure, but that's a modifier. You always got to pay attention to the verb. For sure, weaken. Excellent. Now, let me ask you this. What if I fell asleep at the wheel? What if I decided this were a strengthen type question? What would be the answer I would pick and feel good about it? What do you guys think on this one? Yeah, very nice. It is definitely choice B. B is not the number 1 wrong answer on the board. Sadly, we have a shit answer, like I already said. But this is the trap. This is a trap. This is the right answer to the wrong question. And we'll get there in a split second. But B, when you were going through it, you should have said, oh, B is wrong. Not because it doesn't call into question Nate's argument, not because it's irrelevant, but because it actually strengthens when it should be weakened. And to me, that's what I want you to start to realize. Yeah, exactly, Sean. And like that's the mindset you want to be thinking about. But let me put B on pause for a second. Any other answer? Now this is truly starting to think like a lawyer, channel all that damn Law and Order, Suits, whatever it is you see on TV. Is there another answer here? This is like a super strengthen. Is there another answer that kind of is a strengthening type answer? Because I would argue it kind of goes down that road as well. It's just not as good. Yeah, very nice. It is indeed choice D. And I'll put, like, this is capital S, this is like lowercase s. And again, think about, just real quickly, just watching some TV. What's a lawyer gonna do if he wants to rip Nate apart? He's gonna be like, look, Your Honor, what the F does Nate know about juicers? Nate is probably some stupid GMAT instructor, teaches critical reasoning, but he don't really understand juice and juicing machines. Attack his credentials, exactly right. Call into question his expertise. And at that point, counsel for the other side goes, wait a minute, slow down. Ryan School of Law graduate. Nate was a member of a panel that extensively evaluated those home juicers. Now, granted, they're early prototypes. They're granted they're early prototypes, but still, you're giving him some street cred here. So it's not as good as B, but definitely does not weaken. Like I said, it's in that strengthened vein. So choice D should be shot in the face as well. And it's an island type answer that's on the board, and that's okay. But let's put this on pause for a second. Obviously, the actual conclusion here is down towards the bottom. They kind of give you a little bit of call for action. They kind of give you a little bit of, I don't know, puffery in here, talking a big game. That may be true, Mr. Schumacher. So let me ask you this. Or maybe he is precisely because he did use one of those damn Vitamixes that he's like, this shit's a ripoff. So let me ask you this. What if people decide to obsess on the money here? Hey, but puffery is a legal term. I'm not using Ron's whatever you call puppy parties. Yeah, very nice. They would indeed choose choice C. Excellent, folks. And so if we take a step back, this is where the misdirection starts to occur. People are like, oh yeah, it's all about the cash. But really think about what support was provided for the argument. Their argument support was really right there. They're like, dude, there is no difference here between when it's in raw form or whether it's in juice form. Like, there's no difference. There's no indication it's got any properties. Like, that's his support for his conclusion. So if you want to attack his argument, you attack the support. He never gave you support about money. Like, even if $300 isn't a lot of money, it doesn't mean it's not a waste. So you have to start to realize, like, hey, what's the argument trying to exploit here? Maybe for some of you it is when you go by Costco and you see that Vitamix display in your dam. You're like, damn, I see Phil buying it. Shit, I can't afford that. It's a ripoff. Let me move on. But that's not what this question's about. And so let's take a step back. Let's put this on pause. This should be down to A versus E. One of these is right. One of them is crap, folks. Let me ask you this, and again, this is for all the money on the board here, and this is my final sort of attempt at making sure we try to participate on this. Otherwise, I'm happy to go into mail-in mode. What words would you use to summarize this argument here? What did you think about? That's the most important thing, in my opinion. Again, if I'm looking to crush this, if I want mediocre, I can live with it. So, call to action, like, that's the kind of stuff that, frankly, will be almost on many a critical reasoning question. So that itself is not going to help me get very far. Generalization, we're going to see that in a bit, guys, and I think that's a great way to think about things. But usually you see it when you're trying to draw some broad conclusions. I kind of like the way Melanie went, to be honest, and I even like a little bit of the Georgiana tip on this one. I like that. First of all, we're trying, guys. I really appreciate that. Like I said on day one, I'm not here to spoon feed you to the top. Like, that's not my interest. This is a very demanding course. If you don't want it, that's okay. On day one, I gave you guys the exit. Hell, on day 3, I'm giving you the exit. I don't care. I want people that are committed to this and really want to do this. If not, I don't want to teach you. It's like that simple. So I appreciate you guys trying to actually think about this. I love the way Ruben's going on this, even to some extent Sean's going on this. So here's what I will say here. To me, and again, this is going to be very, like, at some point you guys are going to think of this, and yeah, I like it, Bryce. Like, you guys are going to think of this and you're going to be like, that's all? That's kind of stupid, your little summary. And I would say to you, I know, dude, I'm not fucking like drinking with PJ and Squee and drinking all beers. I'm going to be on the next Supreme Court appointment. Like, I'm a guy who went to Ryan School of Law, man. Like, I think very simply. I don't need this to get complex. This is a question that's about two options. Think about that. You only have two options here. Nothing more than that. In this case, you have fruit, you have juice. Like, that happens to be particular about this. But yeah, hopefully you guys are starting to see this now. Like again, all I care is we try. I don't care if we're not getting the right answer. But like, to me, I lose my shit if we don't try. Because now you hopefully start to see like, oh, that is pretty obvious. Of course it is. If I start to think, but hey, woman, you were there with pros and cons in some sense. You just happened to kind of put it that way. But I wanted to keep it even broader because I promise you're going to see two options all the time. And when I do, I don't want to think about Nate. I don't want to think about pros and cons. I just want to think of, I've got two directions I could go. Now in this case, notice what you know. Homeboy is all about the fruit. So if I'm trying to think like a lawyer here, I know that if it's a strength in question, I show the fruit is somehow better than the juice. If it's a weak in question, I show the fruit is somehow worse than the juice. I'm not a juiceologist. I don't profess to be. I'm a lawyer, or I'm trying to think like one on my way to the 99. So now, given this is a weakened type question, I know that I just got to be somehow saying the fruit is worse than the juice. Let me now, as I pause to predict, try to find what I'm looking for. So, choice A on the board. Most people find it much easier to consume a given quantity of nutrients in liquid form than to eat solids containing the same. Hey, you pretty much told me that liquid is going to be easier than the actual solids. Liquid better than solids. Juice better than fruit. I love you, choice A, and I'm ready to pick you. But I respect you. So it's time now to look and make sure I'm not making any sloppy moves. Choice E, vitamin pills that supposedly contain nutrients available elsewhere elsewhere only in fruits and vegetables, often contain a form of those compounds that cannot be as easily metabolized. What the F? Relevance, Your Honor. This is not about fruits versus juice versus vitamins. This is very, very tightly defined. Fruit versus juice. Choice E dead. A for the win all day long. But again, now if you note and go back to choice B for a second, notice what it says. Juice less healthy than fruits. Juice worse than fruits. Juice worse than fruits. That's why it's a strength and type question, folks. And that's all I want you to be thinking about here. Now, I noticed that Sean had made some comment like this is sort of like a little bit of method of reasoning. And what I would say is sort of. Method of reasoning, you typically want to get more formal argument based. So that's where some of you who are like, oh yeah, there's an assumption and a missing premise, is like, that ain't going to help you on a strength and weakening question. That could help you on a method of reasoning question, but no, I don't care if you fucking fall asleep on those. So to me, it's about actually getting to what we've done, which is don't go too broad, don't go too narrow. It's about just right. And my hope is seeing that Goldilocks type approach on the last question and this one is starting to make sense. All right, good stuff. Most welcome. All right, with that then, I want to get into this next section, which again, you know, they say find conclusion is key, but understand that logical gap is as well. To me, they got to be done simultaneously. Let's go ahead and take our first break of the day though. Let's put 5 on and then we'll get back to work with the rest of this stuff. Yes, definitely at some point we got to make sure Justin's girl is enrolled in the course as well. All right, so here's the one thing that I want to make sure. Oh, God. I had to explain to my daughter what a corny joke was this morning. Now I realize I could have used Melvin to help. All right, with that then, let me say this to start. I want to talk about what I just dubbed the quote of the course, guys, in all seriousness. Honestly, that may be the most important thing of the day here as far as I'm concerned. I love this guy's drive, and I love this guy's accountability. That, to me, this guy's got a great accomplished background, and for me, that's exactly what you need to take you to the top. It's not like, let me just sit on my laurels and be happy with what I've got thus far in my life, because that's going to get me to mediocrity, especially if I keep this up. You have to want this and want this bad. And that's why, like, for me, you'll see me lose my shit in here if I have to, because like, I should never care more about your GMAT journey than you care, ever. Like, when that happens, that's a fail. That's a complete breakdown. And so if you are here and you don't not only mind being held accountable for nonsense, but actually pushed in the right direction to get you where you need to be is what you want, you're going to love this experience. And I say as much in my email, welcome aboard, like, it cannot be clearer than the last paragraph with which I ended my welcome email. I'm not here to make friends. The only people I will offend, and I know I will, are people with an inflated sense of their ability. If that's you, you feel like you're the shit and they're the bee's knees and so on and so forth, you're not going to like me, because I'm going to tell you you're an idiot when you're making idiotic moves. And at that point, you're going to want someone else who's going to stroke your ego. And then when you go get your sad 610, you're going to be like, but wait, what happened? I thought I was a shit. And it's like, no, you're not. And maybe I was right all along. But that doesn't mean you have to stay that way. You just got to adjust your approach. That's all it is, folks, and it can be done. All right, with that then, let's go and get into this next section here. What do we got? Again, the idea here is with critical reasoning, it's not enough to just be able to find conclusions. You got to be thinking about what the actual gap in logic is. So here, obviously, we saw this last week. You're never seeing something this simple. But the idea there was obviously with dogs and men, where there was a gap. I want to take a look at this question here. This is a great question. It's a great question because there are no answer choices here. Obviously, you can cheat. You have your damn books at your disposal. But my ask of you is don't. Again, try to learn what I'm trying to teach in here. And that starts with following some basic strategy. So what is it that I want you to do on this? Obviously, there are no answer choices, so I want you to pause to predict. That's what I want you to do. If you can manage to do that, this becomes so much easier to get done. But what's going to help me do that? Honestly, if I'm able to summarize this in one word, max 2 words, but really 1 word is, I think, the sweet spot on this. And again, you're already starting to see, like, I suck at lawyering. It's not like I'm coming up with some complex summaries here. But as a reminder, nothing should be on the screen here. You should not be summarizing this as peat or peat harvesting. Like, dude, you're never going to see this again. But will you see the same core skeletal structure? You bet, over and over. And to the extent I can summarize it in 1 or 2 words, it will allow me very quickly to predict my right answer. And then when I actually put this on the screen, and I will, it becomes a formality. Now, to really help us nail this one, because this is a joke of a question, I will say this. If you had a sibling growing up as a kid, my guess is you use this type of logic, or you have this type of logic used against you. And that's really what I want you thinking about. Yeah, awesome, Sean. Great to hear you say that. So here's what the plan's going to be. I'm going to give you guys 2 minutes to crack this question. There's no answers on here. So I'm really forcing you to sit your ass on your hands and try to predict. But more than that, I want you to be thinking about how you'd summarize this in 1 or 2 words. Midway through the timer, I will come up here and I'll flip the slide to give you some time to actually read the answer choices, and then of course stick your landing in the poll. You guys are doing a pretty damn good job of not answering questions that haven't been asked. Let's keep that up. All right, with that then, let's put 2 on the clock and then we'll talk. All right, guys, let's go ahead and slowly get into this. I think that's a great comment, Ron, and I think really tries to hammer that point home. Love that meme there. I also want to talk about what I just dubbed Quote of the Day 3, which is awesome. I've had some private chats with a few of you here today, and it's sort of like, hey, I just kind of wander. A common theme seems to be from people that don't crush critical reasoning. I just kind of wander aimlessly through the desert. How does that work out for most people? No different here. Again, there's a lot of things that are common sense in life that for some reason we don't do because it's common sense. But then all of a sudden when it comes to the GMAT, it's like, oh yeah, we're in a quant question, let's go through the drywall. We don't need to go through the door. Why would we? For the same reason you don't do that in real life. It's like, oh, I love to wander around aimlessly and answer choices. Like, that's the way to the top, right? No, it's the way to die of freaking thirst. And so what you have to start to realize as you go through this is if you have some methodology there, and in some sense what I'm trying to do is make this pretty mathematical, scurvy, then I think it does work. And I'm not going to say to you every single question is going to be just like this. It ain't. But when they are, why do you just like spit in its face and not take the gift that you've been given? Like, that's where I have a hard time understanding people. Okay, let's put that on pause. I want to talk about Quote of the Day 4. Quote of the Day 4 is a great comment because I think that's a very common setup with people that are just kind of starting this little journey. A lot of times nerves come in, you know. First of all, this is a stupid prep course. No one even cares how you doing here. Right? Think about that. No one, first of all, it's just me and Ron, and the more me and Ron know, the better it is for you. It's not like we put your answers on blast for the rest of the world to see. Yeah, I'll private chat people from time to time, but that's for your own damn benefit. But some people in here get nervous. They get nervous, and then they start to panic, and it's like, dude, if you're peeing your pants in this class, you better bring fucking diapers to your test center, because I'm telling you right now, like, this is a walk in the park compared to, like, the Pearson Center. But here's what I will say as you start to go through this. You can't just feel like something's the trap. Well, you can, but no 99er does. When you start to get good at this, nay, great, what you're able to do is say, this is the trap because. And to me, that's what you want to do. So you can't be like, oh, I don't want to pick the trap, I don't want to pick the trap, so I'll pick the trap. It's got to be like, of course I don't want to pick the trap, and here's why this is the trap, here's why this is the right, I pick it and I move on. You should start to develop that level of confidence that comes from, of course, being able to stick the landing routinely. So, let me say this now. Dude, that's like a meta question. I don't even know, seriously. way beyond my skill set. So let me ask you this question. If you had to summarize this in one word, what would you use to summarize this argument here, folks? Yeah. I think you guys are starting to get this. Look at this. This is like a stream of pretty much the same thing. You guys are all basically saying, dude, there's a comparison here, and that's absolutely right. Now, some of you are going a little bit further, and that would be too far as I'm concerned. But this is just a simple comparison, arguably, between what? In this particular case, Ireland and this country. Gap in logic, obviously. Now, what am I going to do? I don't know. If it's strengthen, I'm going to show they're similarly situated. If it's weaken, I'm going to show that they're not. Like, this is, when the time you're done and you get to this period, that's all you're thinking in your head. Comparison. Okay, now if it's strengthen, I show they're equal. Weaken, I show that they're not. Let me go in and try to predict. Strengthen argument. Okay, now I'm going to show that Ireland and this country are somehow, some way related. That's all. I'm not a pedologist. I'm a lawyer, or I'm trying to think like one in here. That's it. So now I come to my answer choices. Thankfully, no one picked choice D, but I do have some of these other garbage ones on the board. A, over hundreds of years, the equal balance of all areas changes slowly but significantly, sometimes the advantage of certain flora and fauna. Jackson relevance. Who effing cares? The gap in logic, because remember, is between this country and Ireland. Show me that we're similarly situated. Dead. B, the original ecology of the peat harvesting areas of Ireland was virtually identical to that of the undisturbed wetlands of this country. I freaking love you, choice B. I'm ready to pick you and move on. But I respect you. Just gonna take my time, not rush into anything, and make sure I do this correctly. Choice C, the activities of the other industries in coming years are likely to have adverse effects on the water supply of this country. That's nice. Objection, relevance. What's this got to do with Ireland? Because right now, the only reason you're saying I can go to town, and remember, the call for action is down here, that's the conclusion, is the evidence you gave me was because of Ireland. So some of you are starting to pick answer choices that have nothing to do with anything because you're not paying attention to the support that was provided. E, the peat harvesting industry of Ireland, so you're talking about Ireland, which is nice, has been able to supply most of that country's fuel for generations. Damn you. But you did not connect the dots here. Back to this country. Even choice E, dead on arrival. So for sure, B, best answer on the board. Yeah. 100% Sean, and this is where, let's go back here for a second. I love it, Justin. This is why you have to start to get disciplined. I know that a lot of times we think, hey, beat the timer to beat the test. That idiot was saying that from day one, so that means I gotta just speed up. No, remember what I also said, slow down to speed up. Slow down to speed up. Slow down. Hit the damn brakes here. I did say to you, day one, pause to predict. Trademark pending. Pause to predict. Think about it. Stop going to the grocery store when you're high and wanting to get a bunch of food because you're hungry. You're going to buy too much shit that you don't need and it's going to cost you a lot of money and take you a lot of time as you wander through the store aimlessly. You got to have a mission. Now, let's take a step back here for a second. Remember I said if you had a childhood with a sibling, you've had this busted out before. And again, this is how you start to connect dots. It'd be like, hey dude, how come my brother gets to go to the movies? I want to go too. And then it's like, no, you didn't do your homework. He did. Shut up, go back to your room, do your homework. Okay, good point. I tried to make an argument that I should be able to do it too, but we were not similarly situated. Pops there laid it down. And so to me, that's all you want to be thinking. So what I'm very happy to see here is you guys are starting to stick the landing on being able to summarize. Much easier than the others, but I think we're starting to get into that right mindset. Love it. Very nice job, guys. All right, with that, then I want to bring us to the first tough question of the day. Poor guy. Can you believe that? Almost got tossed on the first day of the other class. I let him stay for 4 weeks by the time I lost my cool with the guy. That other guy, first day, he was almost on his ass out. Shows that I have infinite patience. Well, not infinite, apparently finite, 4 weeks worth. All right, with that then, I want to take a look at this question here. This is the actual toughest, the first tough question of the day, guys. Is this an answer that you should start to predict what the what the sucker answer is going to be? Absolutely, I think so. What you're going to find is that the number one wrong answer is going to be potentially tied with the right answer, or even worse, overpowering the right answer to be just the number one answer on the board. That's a bad move. This is a tough question. Make sure you realize that. Like if you ain't already a critical reasoning god or on your way to becoming one, you better bring some serious respect here. Not only that, I would argue on this one, there's like high-level trap, low-level trap answers lurking. And so you want to start to see some of that as well. I started talking about that last week. It's who's in your rearview mirror. Let's call this a 760 question. Then the 700 guy, what's he picking? A 600 guy, what's he picking? And so on. Now, is this a question that you can summarize in 2 or 3 words? No, not I can't do it. I suck at summarizing. But that doesn't mean you cannot anticipate what the right answer is going to be. You have to just stop and pause and think about gaps in logic. Like in my opinion, I could summarize this in probably a dozen words. Again, none of the words being on the screen, but I've watched enough Law and Order or practiced enough law or learned enough in damn law school that allows me to think about this. And thus that would help me predict my right answer. But sometimes we find that we're trying to jam a square peg into a round hole and it doesn't really fit. I mean, it will fit if you keep doing it, and then the sides come off and boom, voila, it fits, but that's not really the right move. So don't force something that ain't natural. All right, with that then, let's put 2 on the clock. Bring some serious respect, guys. Like I said, this is a tough question. Let's talk when time's up. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get into this question here. Before I do, I want to comment on the question that was asked of me. Obviously, that's a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek response, but I don't know what else to really say. Like, if some of you are saying, like, hey, what? And I just got another private chat from somebody who, I don't even know if he's even freaking reading the main chat at this point. More of the same. It's like, if you think that I've got some secret sauce that I'm not really handing out and I'm just kind of like teasing you with a little bit of it, you guys are wrong. I'm giving you everything I can right now. I mean, I suppose you can go get a 3-year law school education, practice for a few years, and then I'm sure it'll become easier. But if you start to notice, some of you are already starting to dial in right here, right now. So like, to me, I think the problem is a lot of us don't try. Like, we say we're gonna try, but we don't. Like, Even here, ask yourselves, how many of you stop trying to actually read these answers and try to predict the right answer versus, okay, once I'm done with the stimulus, I just started reading. And then you're the same types that cry about, well, I'm not really good at predicting. Well, it's no shit because you don't try. Force yourself. I'd rather get the question wrong than know that I didn't even try to predict it. And then, of course, I got the question right, because it's not scalable. You have to remember that. So, let's look at this question. Now, notice here what we've got. We got a theory here. There is no more conclusion in the mix. Sometimes they'll rip stuff out and pop something else in its place. The theory is there. Now I have to not first of all, I never prove or disprove. God, no. If he did, it was like a mail order. No, definitely not. The one thing that I would say to you is that your job is to make this conclusion, or this theory more likely to be true rather than less likely to be true. That is it. Question for you now. This is actually almost perfect. It's almost a split, but it's not. What is the most tempting wrong answer here on the board, right, folks? As you guys were looking at this, what did you think was going to be the one that snares a lot of people? Yes, let's be clear. It is indeed. You guys are on fire, man. This is the Fire Festival here. Choice C, indeed. Not. And by the way, choice A is a trap. I'm going to dub choice A the low-level trap, choice C the high-level trap for a second here. So let's go back on this one. And it's okay, dude. Forget that, Jewel. It got like 40% of the class. So I want to, and Shraddha, I do want to comment on that because that's fair. Let's start to go back here for a second. Let's start with the first question. Why is C wrong, guys? What is it about C that makes it wrong? Yeah, already known. That's the real key, guys. And you guys are picking up on this beautifully. There's no new info here. Remember, we're in court right now. Judge is like, all right, counselor, what do you wish to add on behalf of the Mayans? I'll be like, Your Honor, I want to give Exhibit A here. What's Exhibit A, counselor? That a severe drought was known to have occurred. Here you go, Your Honor. Exhibit A, drought has occurred. Judge is like, okay. Taken into evidence here, sounds good. So let the record reflect that a drought did occur. Let's move on. We're not going to litigate that fact anymore. What else do you have on behalf of your client, counselor? I'll be like, Your Honor, I got another good one for you. Go back to my briefcase, shuffle through. I'm like, Your Honor, I got Exhibit B here. Judge's like, oh, what's Exhibit B, son? I'll say, I will give you lake sediment cores that provide conclusive evidence that a drought occurred, Your Honor. Here you go. Exhibit B, Your Honor. And I'm looking back at my client, the Mayans, and I'm smiling like, dude, we're about to win this case. And at that point, the judge is going to look at me like, you effing idiot. You could not have even possibly graduated from a mail-order law school program, because at this point you keep giving me the same damn shit over and over and you're wasting my damn time. It doesn't help anybody. After all, just to hammer that point home, if you guys actually truly tried to pause to predict, as I'm trying to push you to do when you get to this bottom of the stimulus before you run it in, I am 100% positive, 100% guaranteed, none of you picking choice C actually said, you know, one thing we don't know is whether a drought even occurred. Because if that was your prediction, then yes, C is a great answer. If that was your prediction, you need to learn how to read. So if that's something you never said, then how can you pick C and feel good about it? Well, I know why, because it's all about temptation. So let's climb our way up on that Think Like the Test Maker pyramid here, folks. What is it in choice C that's tempting here? What is it that when you saw this, you said, that's how they're going to snare those people. They're going to pull them, grab them, and then they ain't ever going to look back. It's like you're getting pulled under from underneath the water, and you're like trying to struggle to survive, but your shit's going to drown in 30 seconds. Yeah, exactly right. Like, notice, and I think some of you said a little bit earlier, like, it almost seemed too easy. Of course it did. There's a good reason for it. Remember what I said. This is, far and away, the first tough question of the day. Some of you don't have that skill set yet to be disrespecting this question the way you're doing. Can't do it. So you want to make sure you start to recognize here, choice C, total bust. Now let's get to choice A for a split second, because that's on the board. This is the number 1 wrong, this is the number 2 wrong, it almost always is. Exactly, Ryan. So look at choice A for a split second. Choice A is the classic, well, we don't know what caused it, so let's say what didn't cause it. And that's not bad. But did you account for every possibility here? Because I'm pretty sure Ron mentioned scurvy up top. What about scurvy? Is it possible that scurvy wiped out all these Mayans? You never talked about it. And as a result, you don't address it. Choice A isn't a great answer. So at some point when you're trying to predict, you're trying to play a little bit of whack-a-mole. You're like, okay, well, let me agree that it's this drought, but let me then do it by saying it's not these other things. They're not mutually exclusive, guys. So let's rewind back on this for a second. When you look at this, what is, in your opinion, the thing that's missing here? What's the gap in logic on this one? I don't really think so, Mel, but whatever. What is the gap there? What is missing? Yeah, awesome, Stephanie. Absolutely right. Exactly, Victor. And so great, Delaney. Nice, Melanie. And so let's rewind back on this one. Exactly, Rahul. Solid, Adit. And so great, Yassine, because let's rewind back for a split second here. Notice they do tell you they appear to have been abandoned. So the idea there is that, like, hey, in some sense, this is the support. You know, they had all these Mayan cities. They lack evidence of destruction. Blah blah blah. They just appear to have been abandoned. The theory is that it was because of this drought. Well, let me ask you this. Exactly, Delaney. So if I were to tell you that we now have proof that they left in 999, it doesn't prove anything. It just makes it more likely to be true rather than less likely to be true that it's this damn drought. Versus, if I say they picked up and left town in 1999, all of a sudden it makes it hell of a lot less likely that the drought is the reasoning for it. And they may have gone for a Prince concert. So the one thing that I would say as you start to go through this is you ask yourself, but when? Oh, when did they go? Purple Rain got Exactly. So now you look at these answer choices and you try to find something that says as much. Choice B, no monumental inscriptions. Now, some of you may have read monumental inscriptions, and you may say, what the F do monuments got to do with anything? Objection, relevance, Your Honor, and move right on. And that's okay. It's also probably going to be wrong on the tough questions. Why? Top of the pyramid, folks. You got to watch out for misdirection. A lot of times the way they screw you on a lot of these tough verbal questions is they put language that's irrelevant looking at the front of an answer with the hope that you ain't a discerning judge. You're happy to just read a few words and judge the book by its cover, convict, and move right on. You cannot do that. Even if it's a dog shit answer, respect the process enough to get to the very end and then convict the guy. Give it its due process. So when you look at the beginning, it's no monumental inscriptions created after 900 AD. Hey, this starts to put me into a time frame that also seems reasonable. Have been found in these cities, but inscriptions dating before that time have been found in abundance. I don't know, man. I feel like throwing them in the brig may be the only solution here, Joe. So here's what I would say to you guys. You might think that these damn monuments are irrelevant, and in some sense they are. But look at the message behind it. They're saying before 900 AD, they're sitting there carving away. After 900 AD, poof, they're gone. Why are they gone? I don't know. Maybe they went on writer's strike. Maybe all their tools broke. Maybe there was legislation that prevented monument inscriptions. But I think, as Delaney's comment suggests, it does make it more likely to be true rather than less likely to be true that the Mayans were there prior to 900 and then picked up and left town then. And that could be probably the real reason, James. And then you start to realize that, yeah, choice B, I love you. I would have never predicted you with regard to monument inscriptions, so on. But that's all I want you guys to realize. Like when I say predict, I don't need you to predict this. Predict as our friends were doing in here, saying, hey, but when did they pick up and leave town? Give me that information. Choice B gives it to you. I love it as a result. I'll check D&E here for a split second. Climatic studies have documented cycles of intermittent drought in the Yucatan dating from the present to at least 7,000 years ago. Objection relevance. Who cares about these intermittent cycles of drought? Choice E, the Mayan city was continuously inhabited from 515 to 50 AD. Honestly, at best, this is irrelevant. At worst, this might even actually weaken the argument. I want no part of this as a result. And by the way, note for your own viewing pleasure the distribution in the poll here. Island-type responses in the DE world. If you are in D&E and you were convinced it was the right answer, that's a problem. If it was more of that guess, because I want to be in on every single poll, I can live with that. Especially if you were down to, let's say, B, D, and E, and you pick D, or B, C, and D, and you pick D. Huge win, because you're student number one. But if instead you're like, no, I'm down to D versus E, I'm pretty positive D is the winner, look at it for yourself. Like 97% of people didn't want to be on the same bus as you. You don't want to be down that road. And again, it's not a coincidence that number one wrong answer, high level. Number two wrong answer, low level. That's all I want you to be appreciating. But first tough question of the day. All right, let's shift gears here to take a look at some common logical fallacies. And again, some of this stuff occurs frequently enough that you want to be able to recognize them when they occur. So, excuse me, the first one I want to talk about is causation v. correlation. And some of you guys saw this a little bit earlier. It says last year, researchers in California found that 95% of people with chronic fatigue were infected with a rare virus not seen in the general population. Therefore, this virus must be the cause. Now, a lot of times they will do this. For me, I like to link causation v. correlation when a cause is actually explicitly drawn. Then I just question it. Yeah, but did one actually lead to that, or did something else lead to it? Is there something else altogether causing both of them? Like, that's the critical thinking that you want to be exhibiting. Always question. That's the way you want to approach it. I think this is a great little example of sorts. Generalization. This is another good one. This happens all the damn time. John visits his friend Steve, has to take the train on his first day. John waits for the train for over an hour and concludes the train is always late. It's like first day, homeboy saying always. Dramatic? Much? This to me is like comparisons. Generalization is comparisons on steroids. Comparisons is one-to-one. Generalization is one from many. So if I want to show it's a good argument, I show they're the same. If I show that it's a bad argument, I show that they're not, in terms of representativeness. So, so maybe this is a good argument. Maybe this is an airtight argument. What do I know? So as we start to go through this, hey dude, if we got flaws in logic here, I need to be told. But just make sure you start to realize that, again, if you can start to get it so mathematical, exactly, Joe. Oh man, put her in the same room as Justin's GF, and then I think we got ourselves a party. I want to look at this third common argument setup here, and the idea with this stuff is you'll see this a lot we'll see more in advanced verbal. They love to just use stats or numbers to ruin your life. If they do, almost always, you want to make sure that you attack there first. I think that's the real key here. Yeah, I mean, Emil, it can be anecdotal in that it's just you're using some sort of other scenario to then draw a conclusion. And so maybe you have a bad experience with Ryan. So you're like, dude, any student named Ryan must suck. It's like, no, you had one episode. Like, how are you drawing such a broad conclusion? Unless it's true, but you know, that's the point. All right, so with that here, notice what it says. In the last decade, the number of violent crimes has increased substantially. Therefore, City X should hire more police and put a greater emphasis on law enforcement. And so when you start to look at this, already you should be saying like, well, just because crime is actually up, is this a good... That might be a good move, safe bet. So you start to realize that it's like, well, wait a minute. Isn't it possible that crime is actually up because more people moved into the city? Very commonly you see absolute numbers versus percentages. And so it's like maybe talk to me about the percentage rates. Maybe they've actually dropped. So these are the kinds of things you need to be paying attention to. All right. With that then, I want to take a look at this question. I think it's a great question. Now, making life even easier, it's under this section of causation v. correlation. So you already kind of know what's being tested. That should already help you now predict the right answer. Just bring some respect, guys, because there's definitely some trap answer action lurking. Let's put 2 on the clock. Let's stick the landing on this. Let's talk when time's up. All right, guys, let's go ahead and take a look at this question here. Not a bad job on this question, but not great either. So let me ask you this to start. What type of question would you say this is? Would you say it's a strengthen or a weaken? This is a little bit of a layup, but not everyone is in agreement, again, which saddens me. Okay. So you guys are telling me, no, you idiot, we should all be in agreement. This is definitely a weaken type question. Again, pay attention to the negative language. That tells you you're dealing with a weaken type question, absolutely. So let me ask you this. You know how I say the right answer to the wrong question is a classic trap. What is the strengthen type answer on this question that if it's on the board, you're like, man, why did you pick it? Where was your respect as you went through it? I think A has definite flavors of strengthen, and I'm with Bryce on this one as well, and Rahul and et al. I think E is another very common type strengthen type answer. And so, yeah, I just want you always honest, Ryan. But yes, excellent work, guys. Great, Melvin, as well. Like, when you, and again, go back to what I'm saying, guys. The island-only responses here on A's and E's, which is great, but where's your shit talking? You gotta have it. If I'm picking E, I'm like, dude, I feel sorry for that idiot in choice A, you know, that ain't gonna fly. And yeah, I think there is a little bit of that flavor of smelling the same here, for sure. That's the way I want you to be thinking. And so, you mean strengthens, right, Joe? You keep typing the same damn thing. And so to me, choice A, choice E, dead on arrival. Now, let's rewind back here. Even choice B for a second is going to be one, it's all good. Maybe that's the reason why your wife says you never listen. So when you look at choice B here, see, I'm even good not only for GMAT, but for marital counseling. So notice what choice B says. It says per capita coffee consumption has been declining over the past 20 years because of the increasing popularity of soft drinks and because of health worries. So for me, at best, it's irrelevant. At worst, it might even start to strengthen the argument. So to me, choice B, dead on arrival as well. I think this comes down to C versus D, and again, seems to be the best place. What do we got here? We got them cutting all their coffee. Why? Because of their heart disease. We got to see what the problem with that might be. Choice C, the study did not collect info that would show whether variations in levels of coffee consumption are directly related to variations in levels of stress, a major causal factor in heart disease. I love you, choice C, because it goes to exactly what I'm trying to establish, the connection between the two. But I respect you, so I keep reading. Exactly, Alex. So I look at choice D. Subsequent studies have consistently shown that heavy smokers consume coffee at about 3 times the rate of non-smokers. That's interesting. I love it, Emil. Because to me, choice D starts to be one of those things that sounds pretty good too, because maybe all these people are dying because of the smoking, not because of the coffee. So, question for you. Let me ask you this. Why is D a bust? For anybody not named Melanie here, think about, again, what's the catch on this? Exactly. Very, 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 very nice, because they've already made these damn corrections. And so as they've already made these corrections, you start to realize, like, choice D, get out. Sucker move. And that is indeed why it's the arguably number 2 answer on the board. Choice C for the win. Now, to be honest, would I have done this with causation v. correlation? Hell no. To me, I would have said this is a problem, this is a solution. What's the problem? Heart disease. What's the solution? Cut the coffee. Well, what do I do? In this case, if I'm trying to weaken this, I show that cutting the coffee won't necessarily help me with the heart disease. Absolutely. Even here, guys, I could have seen problem and solution if you actually thought about it. Here's the problem. We got this violent crime. Here's a solution. Hire more police. Who's to say hiring more police will actually solve my violent crime issue? Maybe I need more, I don't know, parole officers on the street watching the people that are out there. These are all things that you want to start to think about. I'm telling you, this is where things start to reappear over and over. And if you can start to now say, hey, wait, we just did this in hour one, forget the fact that I'm sitting on an island with some of these answer choices. I want no part of this being an A or a B or a D and an E. I should have gotten this right. Damn straight you should have. All right, with that, then I want to bring us to the second tough question. Second tough question of the day. As a reminder, remember when the first tough question was up? Most of us ate it. Respect this question, guys. Now notice it's under the scheme of generalization. It is a strengthen type question. So that means you want to equal it. Weaken, you don't. So given that it's strengthen, we already now know what's the strategy we want to execute. Make sure you stick the landing on this. I've given you everything you need. I've categorized it for you. I've given you the strategy. This is just hour one stuff that I've been trying to get you to think like a lawyer on. So how is it that I'm going to say this is the second tough question of the day? Because obviously there's a right answer. There's a high-level trap answer. There's a low-level trap answer. And there's two crappy answers as well. Let's stay away from the crap, guys. Let's put 2 on the clock. Let's knock this out. Bring some respect, and we'll get into our final break. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get into this question here. Before we do, though, I do want to comment very quickly on I love quote of the course 2. Although Ron just told me that that student 2-timed me and apparently chatted the same thing to Ron. But I do appreciate the sentiment nonetheless, because I think it says, hey, I may not be getting this now, but it's about essentially pushing through so I could get them right later. I'll take it for sure. But I do think quote of the betrayal, exactly. I do think quote of the course 3 is a huge one, because I love it. It's from someone in here who, again, I don't really wear kid gloves in here. And so to me, the one thing that I would say to you is you could get defensive. You could try to be you don't know me. You can't judge me like every classic talk show guest ever. You can catch me outside, whatever the hell you want. I don't care. But if you're instead open and willing to acknowledge that, hey, what I'm doing ain't working, that's why my ass is in this stupid course listening to you, then that's huge, because that's the first step to looking to turn this around. Anybody can do this. And again, I love that we've already got a former alum as a 720, and she's like, I'm hungry for more in here. Dude, kill it, man. All right, so let me ask you this, because I do want to kill some of these answers pretty damn quickly. But hopefully when you look at a question like this, you're able to start to understand what's being said. I don't typically write a lot out with critical reasoning. Part of it is because I secretly get critical reasoning. I did go to law school after all. But if you want to dumb things down, I got no problem with it. I'm constantly pushing you to dumb things down. In the world of quant, it would be no different here. And part of that is just being able to understand things. And so for me, at least, this is very similar to, say, going to Disneyland with my kids. There, at every single ride, is a height chart. And you gotta be that tall to get on. In this case, it's sort of like that. You need to have a minimum understanding of social impact. At some point, you've got the new antihistamine that is below that line. And as a result, the guy gets pretty dramatic. He's like, dude, we should slow down the drug rollout. And you should be saying, that seems excessive. Sort of like if my daughter, who's a bit of a runt, walks in and all of a sudden she can't get on the ride, and then of course, exactly, and then all of a sudden, my girl, they're like, well, if she can't get on, none of you are getting on. And then at that point, it's like, man, all those other kids are gonna be pissed. And they'll be like, what the F does she gotta do with me? Well, if it's a strengthen, we're gonna show that she is like the rest of you. Or in this case, the new antihistamine is like the rest of you. That is it. That's our goal. That's the strategy we're now executing on as we try to find the right answer. So, question for you. What is the most popular wrong answer on the board? The high-level trap, the answer that comes really close to giving you what you want, but it stops a step short. What did you see and realize, man, it's gonna nail me? Yeah, awesome. Look at that stream of B's, guys. You guys are dialed in, on fire. Maybe it was that ass kicking on the first freaking question or two that got us going. I love it, man. I will take it all day long. And I will disagree with you, Bryce. I actually don't think it's a B or D. It is definitely a B. Or it could be the stellar TA, or Sean Kumar, the stellar second TA in the running. So despite him saying probably what I picked. So let's rewind back on this for a second. In choice B, there is one word that should give me tremendous concern. What is that one word, guys? When you read it, you go, that doesn't sit so well with me. And this comes back to day one, frankly, which you guys killed on day one. Exactly. Love it, love it, love it. It is that word some. What does some mean? Well, we learned on day one, in theory, anything from one to all. That's what it could mean. So if this were just about one, this would be a terrible argument. If this could mean all, then all of a sudden, it's a great argument. You want to pick up on that. And remember, just go back to day one, go back through the book. Some definitely does not mean not all. A lot of people equate the two. Never. Some means by definition at least one, all the way to all potentially. You just don't know. It's a sampling. So let me put this on pause and let me tell you what I like to do when it comes to travel. I like to fly nonstop. The reason I like to fly nonstop is because it causes me and my family problems if I don't. LAX to JFK, only way to go. If I gotta stop over in, say, in this case, Chicago O'Hare, the chances of my bags getting lost, my seats getting bumped, my flight being delayed, all start to skyrocket through the roof. Wyoming, is that even a state in the Union? Fucking Dick Cheney, the best thing that ever came out of there, coastal elite. So here's what I will say to you. Why am I expressing that? The reason is very simple. Think about what happens in a stopover. You're onboarding new baggage, you're onboarding new passengers. That's what's causing all this other drama. I don't have time to onboard anything. And so, hey, my high school ski trip was in Jackson Hole, Delaney. So the one thing that I will say to you guys as you look at this is, whenever you come to an answer choice, that's good, Joe. Whenever you come to an answer choice that has language that could wobble a little bit and that you want to add more information to, what I would say to you is, it's a bust. You have no ability to add new information to anything you've been given. Here, you take it the way it is. Since some could mean this or some could mean this, it's a shitty answer. I get why it's tempting. It felt good, it seemed good. It almost went the way you wanted it to go, but then you got lazy, you got disrespectful, and you ate it as a result. So to me, choice B is the high-level trap. Let's go back to choice D, which some of you mentioned. I don't like it because it's not a high-level trap. It is a low-level trap because in this particular case, they definitely have the one-stop flight in the mix with regard to some, but I would argue it's a two-stop flight. And non-stop is better than one stop, and one stop is better than two stops because the second stop in here, in my opinion, comes with that chemically similar bit. This is like, you got to get me to stop in Dallas-Fort Worth on my way to Chicago O'Hare. I want no part of that, American Airlines. I hate you. Get me to JFK. Because think about what you know with chemically similar. You think it means they got a similar social impact, but nowhere do they say that. That's you just want to onboard new information. You cannot do that. I already told you, we're not onboarding shit. This plane takes off and then it lands. And your attempts to try to squeeze that shit in there isn't going to work. Choice D, dead on arrival. And so here's a great example. Let's dub this a 700 level question. The guys picking choice C are getting a 600 on this test. The guys picking choice D are getting a 500 on this test. And so if, as I look at this, I start to think about this as, hey, choice D is the trap, that's okay. It is a trap for the 500 level folks. Chances are then likely that I'll pick a 600 level answer because this is the only guy I see in my rear view. But if I'm a 700 level guy getting this question correct, then the trap that I see in the back of my head is the guy who's picking choice B. I don't really see the guy in choice D, meaning I do, but I don't even consider it. And then of course the rest of the crap answers, I feel sorry for those guys on the road to the 400 and the 300 respectively. So let's rewind back and let's make sure we start to execute on this one. Notice what choice A says. The social impact of the new antihistamine is much better understood than that of most new drugs being tested. Now some of you will read this and say, new antihistamine better understood. That's not the case, it's far from clear. Let me move on. Poor decision. You haven't respected it. You haven't actually thought about what it's really saying. You're just reading, but not really absorbing. Think about the word better for a split second. Think about the word than for a split second. Those are comparative words. That means this is in relation to something else. Some of you guys died in arithmetic last week. That's a fact. Yet after tomorrow's lesson, some of you guys are going to say, hey, Arithmetic went a lot better than algebra did. Does that mean you actually crushed arithmetic? No, I just said you died in arithmetic last week. But tomorrow's algebra, because you didn't spend any time this week to actually cement your weaknesses, will be 1,000 times worse. They'll just straight up mutilate your body. And so as you start to go through this, when I read the actual choice A, you telling me that the impact of this new antihistamine is much better understood than most new drugs, you're basically trying to tell me, hey, most of those kids out there are even shorter than my daughter. And as a result, I start to realize, like, yeah, that's the reason those fools should not get on the ride either. I love you, choice A, because you're exactly what I would predict. But now I'll check out choice C and E and make sure they're not any better. The economic success of some drugs inversely proportional to how well we understand them. Objection, relevance. How does that speak to the generalization taking place? I know it's generalization because I'm taking one episode and drawing a broad conclusion from it. Hell no. E, the new antihistamine should be next on the market only if most new drugs being tested should be on the market also. Again, objection, relevance. Who cares what the rules are for whether this should be next on the market or not? Right here, here's our conclusion. We need to make that more likely to be true. Get out, E. And again, you note the island responses for yourselves, guys. That's what you want to be thinking. Okay. That's possible. All right, with that then, I wanna, so pretty nice. So look at the poll distribution. So notice the poll, and that's fair too, Sean, right? That's precision in language. One word can make or break you because most just means more than half, clearly. Look at the poll distribution here. Is it a coincidence that A, number 1, B, number 2, D, number 3? Hell no. That's what I want you to start to recognize. This is arguably, at least according to the poll, the toughest question we've done thus far. Even though the first one was, with the Mayans, was basically a 50-50 split. I think it was like 40-40 and then the 20 went scampering between the right and the trap. But look how now this pulled you into 2 different trap action. And like, to me, that's what you want to start to realize. Like, you ain't going to have me there on test day saying, hey, bring respect on this question. This is a tough one. You have to have a default mode that's like, hey, 31 quant questions, there's a 31 times of respect. Oh, 36 verbal, 36 incidences of respect. Let's do this. All right, we're done here, guys. Next up is the world of inferences. Good time to take our final break. Let's just throw 5 on and we'll come back and start to finish this out. It's an anti-Canadian bias, Ron. That's what it must be. And by the way, I'm getting to every single private chat. Bear with me. I've got quite a few flashing oranges, but you will always get a response from me. So just sit tight, folks. Sorry, it's taking a little bit later. Hi, Olivia. I love it. With that then, let's go ahead and get into this next section, which is all about inference-based questions. Inference-based questions, like I said, you got to draw a conclusion, guys. The burden of proof on this, for it to be correct, is that it must be true. That's the burden of proof. Got to be proven by the premises. Where does it go wrong? When it's not guaranteed to be true. That doesn't mean it must be false. I think sometimes people say, oh yeah, must be false. 4 wrong must be falses gets me to the right answer. Nah, it doesn't work that way. It's could be false. That's the real burden of proof that you want to be thinking about. And so here's my math formula. Some of you guys are very math driven on this one. Art of the Deal. I think you've already lost if you're quoting from the Art of the Deal, Ron, at this point. I think there's, unless there's another chapter that you can just declare yourself an emergency and then you win. 100% true is 100% correct. That is what that sentence up top says. I'll give you that one. The formula that everybody understands that flows from that is 0% true is 0% correct. Like, that's a no-brainer. The shit gets tricky when it's 99% true, folks. If it is 99% true, it is 100% wrong. Make sure you get this last one. These are the 3 math formulas you got to stick to when it comes to inference. I know we ain't doing math. Math is tomorrow. But if you stick to these 3 equations when it comes to inference-based questions, the second most important question in the world of critical reasoning, because first most important is strengthen / weaken, because they're the same damn thing at their core, you will then crush probably 90% of this test. Once you get this, and obviously the strength and weaken I did before this. So with that, then I want to take a look at this next question here. This is probably the 3rd tough question of the day. Why? Because first of all, people already think inference questions are tough to begin with. But that's because they don't stick to my 3 formulas here. This is very simple. Now, remember the whole first part of this lesson was all about thinking like a lawyer. That is so important with strength and weakening cases. I would argue even with inference questions, thinking like a lawyer is absolutely essential. But the type of lawyer I want you to think like now is a criminal defense lawyer for a second. How does a criminal defense lawyer work? Again, watch this shit on TV, we all understand. They try to get their clients off by any means necessary by planting a seed of doubt in the judge or jury's mind. And then, of course, they can't convict beyond a reasonable doubt. So all I'm going to do is try to plant a seed of doubt with an alibi as to why 1% chance that this doesn't have to be true. But I can't come up with crazy sort of hypothetical reasons that don't exist. I have to come up with real plausible ones. So just as an example, if I were to say like OJ could not have killed those 2 people on that night because OJ was actually at the Fire Festival back in the day. And I was like, what? That's the reason why. I was like, no. First of all, there was no effing Fire Festival back in the day. So for you to say that that's where he was doesn't make any sense at all. It actually flies in the face of the facts that you have. So if you come up with an alibi, eat a cheese sandwich. He's lactose intolerant. If, in this particular case, you're going to come up with an alibi, come up with one that's plausible. Exactly, Melvin. That's what I would say to you. All right, with that then, I want to go ahead and take a look at this question here. I think this is a good question. Respect it. Like I said, this is the third tough question of the day. If you ain't seeing some trap answer action lurking, you're probably walking into it. Let's put 2 on the clock. Let's get this done. All right, guys, let's go ahead and slowly get into this question here. I love this comment. I've just dubbed this the quote of the year. I don't think it's ever going to get any better for the rest of this year, and it's early, because this guy gets it. This guy gets it. This guy is a 400 level, I take it back, was displaying 400 level tendencies, let's just say, but said, F that, I don't want a 400. And I know if that idiot on screen can get a 99th percentile, I sure as hell can or die trying getting close. And to me, what did he do? Followed some basic advice. Starting to read my email, digest it, watch freaking videos, rewatch stuff that he's already done in here because he knows activity is not achievement, and starting to cementing what needs to be learned. It doesn't matter. You should not have personal shame if you say, dude, I sat through 3 hours and I didn't get what I was supposed to. Oh, well, let me keep moving. No, or I don't want to rewatch a video because then I feel like a loser. I don't get it, man. We all do different things, like, you know, like do different things well. And there's probably shit that some of you do really well that I can't even imagine being able to do, no matter how hard I try. But the point is that doesn't mean you stop trying unless it's not important to you. So it's up to you. You're the ones that are here. You're the ones that are paying big bucks. You're the one who are actually sitting here on a Saturday, Sunday morning here in LA, or freaking, as one of you pointed out, it's like almost like 11 o'clock out in the Middle East right now. Like, that's fine. Do it because you want to achieve something, not just do it because you want to check the box. Like, go to my mail order MBA program. I'll crank out a diploma for you. I don't even need your damn GMAT score. So I love this comment. Such a great comment. Shit like that gets me fired up. I'm ready to go goddamn and crush this test. All right, with that then, let's rewind on this one with word art. Hey, beggars can't be choosers, Emil. Just be happy you got 3 letters in MBA here. That's an extra upcharge. All right, so here's the question for you guys. Any idea what the number one trap answer is on the board right now? And I love the way this answer choice distribution worked. Extra charge, you want them in order? Bam, exactly. That's an editing charge, Ron. What is someone likely to pick on this? Because it just felt good, it seemed good. Any ideas? And this is a little bit of a shot in the dark, and I'm okay with this one. But I'm just curious to see if we can sort of crowdsource around it. Because I will tell you this much. No joke, we have approximately 30% picking choice B. This is always, without fail, the most popular wrong answer on the board. Always. And that's okay. You know, like, this is sort of now just a gut feel. It's not because it's the right answer to the wrong question or anything else. So, like I said, I don't typically write a whole lot out on this sort of stuff, but what I do is, if I get formal logic, I can diagram this. And so here, if you notice, what they're telling me is if Shiro wins, McG is going to be appointed head of the planning comm. They tell me that Stauning is more qualified to head it because he's an architect who's been on the planning comm for 15 years. Then it says, unless the polls are grossly inaccurate, Shiro's going to win. So basically, if the polls are accurate, Shiro wins, McG gets appointed, but Stauning is more qualified. Like, my ability... it's the Costanza way. My ability to get this down to this diagram, so I don't got to reread this, is absolutely mission critical. This is part of that lawyering that I want you to start to think about. There's a lot of background noise here. I don't got time to reread. Rereading will bury me. So when I'm actively engaged, especially if I got some if-then logic, and some of you obviously commented on this a little bit earlier, like, this is as good as it, I don't want to say it's as good as it gets, but kind of is. So now I've got to see which of these must be true. Well, let's talk about B here for a split second. It says McGinnis will be appointed head of the planning comm only if the polls are a good indication of how the election will turn out. I drew some emphasis to that word there for good reason. A lot of people say, oh, extreme words are extremely wrong. And what I would say to you is, no, you're an extreme idiot. That's a terrible strategy. The correct strategy is, if you see extreme words, use extreme caution. That's the strategy I'll put my name behind. Because what you find is that some answer choices need that extreme language. Some of them don't. But here's a pro tip for you. On an inference-based question, it needs to be 100% true to be 100% correct. If that's the case, then what you have here is a word that, is it really going to be airtight? Like, when they use such an extreme word, you don't think I can come up with even one alibi as a sleazy criminal defense lawyer to get my client off? Because, like, right now, dude, that's exactly what you should be asking, Ryan. So when I look at this, the first thing I'm going to say is, like, what if actually I went to law school with McG back in the day, and I put him into office even though I beat the pants off of Shiro during this election? I immediately can toss out choice B as a result. Choice A, if the polls are inaccurate, someone more qualified than McGinnis will be appointed head of the planning comm. What? No. In this case, the polls are inaccurate. I win because I ran for election. But me and McG actually went to business school together back in the day as well. So I put him into office. So even choice A, tossed on site. Thankfully, no one picks C. C is a dog shit answer. So I come to D and I come to E. D, McGinnis is not an architect and has not been on the planning comm for 15 years or more. I love you, choice D. Because you're telling me up top he's more qualified because he's an architect who's been on the planning comm for 15 years. So I'm ready to pick you, but I respect you. E, if the polls are a good indication of how the election will turn out, someone less qualified than Stauning will be appointed head of the planning comm. And that does seem to be true too. So I love you, choice E. Now I've got me a problem, because I can't have two right answers. So question for you. When you look at choice D, what is the one extreme word that's hidden? It's kind of subtle, but man, oh man, from here on out, I need you to be heightened alert when you see it. Yeah, awesome. Emma, Bryce, Tina, Rahul, Bert, Emil. It is indeed that word and. Great, Melanie, Ruben, Cindy, Adit. Like, when you actually take a step back on this is how these sneaky bastards get you. You know that he's more qualified because of those two things. Is this probably true? You betcha. I'm willing to say it's a 99% true opportunity here. 99% ain't 100. And as a result, I have to have a hell of a lot more caution with this. If I do the what if game, what I say is like, well, isn't it possible that McG here is actually an architect? He's just been on the planning comm for maybe 15 days. That's why he's useless. He doesn't have a good sense of how things are run. That would then make this a good statement. Or on the flip side, I could be like, dude, McGee's a lifer. He's been there for 20 years. But he's a stupid GMAT instructor. He's got no value on a planning commission anywhere. So now the second part is true. The first part, not as much. And so what you have in front of you would be a great answer if it was less restrictive. If it were less restrictive, this would guaranteed be 100% true. But it ain't. They chose to serve you up the more restrictive version. And like I said, with extreme words, you gotta have extreme caution. And I pro tip this by saying on an inference-based question, probably gonna be wrong. And I'll start talking about thinking like the Vegas test takers some tomorrow as well. I may have hinted on it last week. But to me, on an inference-based question, I can gamble. And I'd say if I had to gamble, I would not be picking extremely worded answers. So yeah, choice E has to be correct because that's what my diagram says. Best answer for sure and 100% true and therefore 100% correct. Now some of you may say, well, there's nothing new here. And what I would say is, what do you need new information for? Your job is not to find new information in an inference-based question. Your job is to be able to draw conclusions that must be 100% true. This is 100% true based off what you have. Yeah, and I think that's huge. But as a reminder, because shockingly, I told you all in my email welcome me to the course that you should do as much, Mr. Kumar. But here's what I would say to you guys. Don't do it per question, because that's not real. You got to do them in batches. You got to do them in batches. All right, look at this comment here. It says, with regard to inference-based questions, you got to stay within scope. As soon as you start to go beyond scope, you start to run the risk of commenting on things that you have no business commenting. So, you know, maybe you've heard this when you watch these legal shows, be like, objection, calls for speculation, Your Honor. What does that mean? It's a fancy way of saying you're talking a bunch of shit about shit you don't know. That's really what it's about. And you can't do that with an inference-based question because your job is to make sure it's 100% true to be 100% correct. That's the way you want it to realize. Oh, man. Well, you got to put the poor man on blast. She might even be in the room right now. She thinks class is about to come to an end. All right, with that then, and get her damn credit card number on. All right, with that then, let's go ahead and take a look at this question here. By the way, this question is one where there's a right answer, there's a quote-unquote trap answer, and there are 3 crap answers. Oh, if the girlfriend comes in, good point. My marital counseling advice does not cover the cheating, lying bastards. All right, with that then. Exactly, she can't be in the VIP room, Justin. All right, let's put 2 on the clock. Bring some respect. Let's talk when time's up. Man, I want to comment real quickly on this super real quote of the day. So nice to see, because it's someone who just is not looking to settle. Someone who's like doing well in here. But that isn't what she's here to do well. Who the F cares about doing well on a single question in here, or even a string of questions? What this girl's looking to do is clearly get an approach that's scalable. And I just love that hunger to do this right. That's exactly the kind of stuff that takes you to the top. And if I'm not going to the top and I don't have this attitude, it's not rocket science to figure out why. Best practices are what lead you to best results, guys. All right, with that, then I want to look at this question here. Before we go even further on this, I have all 5 answers on the board, and some of these are god-awful. So without offense to anybody, what would you say is the worst possible answer ever on this question? And I would argue there are like 3 contenders, but I will take whatever you give me. Let's at least put some of these out of their misery. I 100% agree. Choice A is god-awful. Like god-awful. A+. I will take god-awful. And the reason I say this is they never say what constitutes an artifact, let alone disagree on it. All right, fair enough. Maybe the pressure of your girlfriend watching over your shoulder is causing you to panic there with your keyboard. Choice A, definitely garbage, guys. Now, I do also think in this case, and I'm kind of secretly with Aziz and quite a few of you, Rahul, etc., say D and E are god-awful. They are, dudes. Like choice E is another island type response. Choice D definitely got more than a few island responses, but should not be on the board either. Like choice E, whether antique shipwrecks can properly be said to be on public property. They never discuss that, let alone say it ain't so, Joe. Let alone they do not dispute it. Like you have to discuss it and dispute it or disagree before you can even pick something like this, because it does very clearly say on their evidence. Choice E out. Choice D, whether maritime law can ever be applied. Extreme word, extreme caution. You got to be asking yourself on an inference-based question, is this going to be 100% true? First of all, they never talk about this, let alone disagree on it. So choice D, dead. This is about B versus C, guys. This is supposed to be easy street. Because what do you got here? They tell you it's a centuries-old maritime law. There are 2 elements. Risk your life, rescue the ship. That's what you got to be able to satisfy. Well, what do they tell you? The treasure hunters all up on them being able to keep their loot. Why? He's like, man, they risked their lives and they saved the ship from oblivion. Satisfied the 2 elements of the law. Archaeologist says not so. He's disagreeing. What's he disagreeing on? These shipwrecks have stabilized. I honestly don't believe you need to read any further. They're clearly disagreeing on whether the ship is in peril. Choice B, final answer. But even if that's not enough, you can keep reading. It says they've stabilized over the centuries they've lain underwater. The only danger they are in, so who's this they? Some of you are convinced it's the treasure hunters. It's from the greedy treasure hunters who destroy the archaeological evidence to loot the artifacts. So basically, he's being a little sarcastic here. He's not saying the treasure hunters are in danger, because if the treasure hunter is in danger, then the other treasure hunters have to be harpooning the guy and taking all his loot. They ain't. This is about just messing up the ships themselves. Choice C, bad answer, trap answer. All the others are pure crap, guys. All right. With that, then, I really quickly want to take a quick crack at one question and we'll call it a day. Notice what they say here. And I think this is good for a second. They say, look, with strength and weakened questions, you are the lawyer trying to make or break a case. And I think that's true. With inference questions, they say you're the judge or jury. You're trying to make a decision that must be true based off the facts in front of you. I think that's a good way of thinking about it. But from a strategic point of view, my advice is think like the criminal defense lawyer. Come up with that what-if scenario, the alibi. That's what you want to do, get your client off. You're not trying to predict with inference questions. Remember that. With method of reasoning questions, they don't really toss it into a legal example, but I'll tell you, I think there is a good one. Every single case that's big or newsworthy, you'll always see on TV. And the guy who is in front of the courthouse is the guy you want to be here. Not the guy who's in the studio, the legal analyst, not the anchor who's having that conversation with him. Your job is to be the reporter in front of the courthouse, because that guy's job is very simple. He does not inject himself into the case. He does not opine on what's going to happen. He's not going to opine on what happened. He's not going to opine on what should have happened. That ain't his job. His job is just state the facts. That's your job here. And so as a result, my advice is to pause to predict. Put it in your own words first before you get into those answer choices, because if not, you'll get swayed, and not in a good way. So with that, then I want to take a look at just this last question here. I think it's a good question. And again, the actual question trigger words typically are a mouthful of rhetoric principles. So here it's like the drilling proponent's reply to the drilling opponent proceeds by. So it's like, what the F are you saying? Oh, you just want me to zone in on what the proponent is doing? Okay. So does that mean I just read this? Hell no, it's about context. So let me read opponent, let me read proponent, let me think about what just took place. If I had to get a mic in front of me so I could go back to network news, what would I say? Then I go and find my answer here. If you don't know what the sucker answer is, the most tempting wrong answer on the board, you're picking it. There are 3 crap answers. Stay the F away from it. 2 on the clock. Let's get this done and we'll wrap this thing up. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get into this question here. Pretty nice job on this one in that, again, it's down to the right answer and the trap answer for the most part, but we do have some islands on the board, and perhaps this is an indication that maybe next week when we do verbal, we could start to tighten things up a little bit more, because if I got to go through 5 answer choices on every single verbal question, this also is what impacts how much we can kind of cover. But in this case here, good news is no one's picking choice A, garbage answer, but we do have all the others on the board. So let me ask you this question. As you were reading this, what did you know was going to be the most tempting wrong answer? Because it felt pretty good. It just did not stick the landing though. Any idea what they tried to sell you on the wrong answer here, that classic misdirection? Yeah, let's make sure we start to see. It definitely comes down to C versus D, I think. But given the number of C's on the board, I really do want to say it's choice C, guys. And again, the polls don't lie, they will back me up. Pointing out that the drilling opponent's argument is a misapplication of a frequent and legitimate way of arguing. When you read this, that should have felt good. This guy came at you with a terrible argument. This guy basically says, dude, don't be crazy. You might as well argue. And then he threw another terrible argument in his face. But at what point does the guy actually discuss what's a frequent and legitimate way of arguing, guys? I may have missed that. Oh, actually, no, I didn't. Some of you just went too far, because you liked maybe the pointing out aspect of things. That's all right. Is there any language in choice D that you did not like, especially those of you that picked choice C, because this is something that happens frequently. They love to hide the right answer, maybe behind language that seems a bit out of place, maybe unusual, maybe too strong. I think that's fair, absolutely. I think strikingly sounds pretty extreme, perhaps. But how extreme can it be when the guy is basically calling him ridiculous? That's my only question. Yeah, and I think that's fair, Bert, you know? And so the one thing that I want you to start to understand is sometimes on those right answers to sometimes harder questions, they'll couple it with language that don't make you want to love it. But I may have said it before, and if not, let me say this now. I don't need you to ever love the right answer when it comes to verbal, ever. I just need you to like it more than you do for others. And when you look at these other options, A is a joke, B is a joke, C is a joke, E is a joke. Doesn't leave me with a whole lot of other options but choice D here. But just to hammer this home, choice B, claiming that the stats cited are factually inaccurate, dude, that's the fake news answer in my opinion. They never say that. Choice B, dead on arrival. E, proposing a conclusion that is more strongly supported by the drilling opponent's evidence. Huh? This guy's talking about farming here. This guy was talking here about oil. No way, no how is even E going to be right. And again, the polls don't lie. You guys are where you should be with the CD world. Now, let me say this. Say you came down to C versus D, and then it was just a coin toss of sorts. How do I know where I should go? You make arguments, guys. You start to say straight up in your analysis, you know what? C is kind of good because of the pointing out bit, but look at this frequent legitimate way of arguing. Where do they ever talk about that? Definite con against it. Whereas choice D is really nice because I agree with you. I think that parallel talk is solid. But then this strikingly unsupported bit kind of leaves me a little bit, But let me now think for a second. Don't be ridiculous, that's pretty strong. Strikingly unsupported makes sense because that was a shitty ass argument here. And the homeboy threw another shitty ass argument in his face. I'm going with choice D for the win. I may not love it. It may be the best of the worst. But when I look at everything else, nothing else even compares. And that's all the analysis is, folks, when you get down to C versus D. It's not like, oh, what the F, let's just go C, let's just go D. You might get it right, and you may then start to make that your muscle memory. It ain't a winning approach that's built to last or to scale. All right, take a look at this other question there later. It's a good rules of bull-faced one. That's all I got for critical reasoning, guys. I really do think critical reasoning is such an important lesson. I think across the board, I really recommend those of you that did not crush this, and I mean crush it the right way, to spend some time with this lesson again down the road. It will pay off immensely. We'll be doing reading comp next week, but we'll be doing critical reasoning. When we get advanced verbal, it'll be nothing more than week 2 critical reasoning. And to this extent, you can start to onboard this mentality of mine to think like a lawyer. I think it will carry you I know it will carry you very far. All right, that's all we got for today. What's in store for tomorrow? Algebra, guys. Algebra is a beefy lesson with a beefy skill builder. A lot to cover for sure. Appreciate it, Mr. McKay. Here's what I will say. Come to class having crushed the skill builder, especially if you got your shit eaten up last week. It's not a lesson you just want to clock in, clock out. Everything we do from here on out will be based off of arithmetic and algebra, and you really want to have these fundamentals down cold. All right, that's all I got to say here, folks. Sorry for running class so damn late, but hopefully it was well worth it. Appreciate you guys turning shit around. It started off in a very shitty way to start the day, but I think things got a hell of a lot better. Come to class ready to participate and prepared. That's all I ever ask. If that ain't you, don't come to class. Don't even stay in my class if that can't ever be you. That's my advice. All right, that's all, folks. Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it. Have a good rest of the day. See you all tomorrow.